This dude literally can't despawn. Folded, sliced, blown up, he's still here. Then he meets a certified cutie who is cursed with bad luck. Touch her, and your life gets yeeted. Bro is just trying to log off permanently, but her curse won't work on him until they experience a manga-level romance. Now time to switch to my ugly voice.
Fuko is our MC here, but she's about to give up and jump off a bridge before the story properly begins. After finishing her favorite manga, she's ready to end her life. Just then, a strange-looking guy interrupts her. He points out that standing at that edge is dangerous.
You alright, mate?
What's the name of this road?
You can't park there, sir.
I know I can't park.
And Fuko explains just how serious she is about making the jump. The manga she finished is a romance story, and she wishes her life were more like that. According to her, she's never been able to experience romance because of her body.
What? How could you say something like that?
So she's decided to end it all. Fuko threatens the strange guy to keep him away, saying that if he touches her, he'll catch an incurable disease. On hearing this, the dude immediately takes the chance. After touching Fuko, he looks thrilled, imagining how the disease will affect him and how serious and gruesome his death will be. Fuko panics, fearing her unluck is about to activate. Suddenly, the floor cracks beneath them, and the strange guy falls off the bridge to his demise. Fuko may look like a regular girl, but she's far from ordinary. She has a strange ability, unluck, that brings bad luck to anyone who touches her. She breaks down in tears, blaming herself, and it's clear this has happened many times before. Suddenly, the strange guy's head flies back onto the bridge. He's still alive and earns another fitting title, the Strange, Weird Dude. He already didn't look like an average Joe, but this is beyond expectation. He has an ability of his own, never to die. He's undead. He's excited now, having figured out what's going on with Fuko. He knows the disease threat was just to scare him off, but he's genuinely happy to learn what touching her really does. Did he just die? Yes. Would he do it again? Absolutely. His body regenerates from his head, and to him, it's completely normal. Fuko sees him as a zombie, freaks out, and runs like she forgot food on the stove.
I think if we all just take a couple of deep breaths here and just try to...
The strange, weird guy, now zombie, quickly catches up. He introduces himself as Undead and says he has questions. The cops notice the disturbance and move in, but Undead escapes with Fuko. He glides through the city like Spider-Man heading to Aunt May's on Thanksgiving, while Fuko is in full panic mode. Undead lands on another rooftop to question her properly. Fuko refuses to answer even when he threatens to drop her. She was already planning to jump anyway. Undead escalates, swinging her around like a pro-Olympic hammer thrower. Fuko completely loses it, screaming until she finally agrees to explain everything. She starts from the beginning. As a child, her parents were about to travel and she hugged them tightly. As soon as they got on the plane, it exploded, killing everyone on board. That's when she realized bad things happen to people she touches, though the severity varies. As she finishes, Undead grabs her. Fuko is confused. She just explained this. Undead tries to recreate the same level of unluck that killed her parents by hugging her despite Fuko resisting. As expected, something bad happens. A crate of bananas falls from a passing aircraft and crushes Undead. It's nothing he can't recover from, and he's back up quickly, unsatisfied by the result. Meanwhile, Fuko slips on a banana peel and falls off the building. It feels like a Final Destination scene. As she falls, Fuko reflects on her life. She feels like she's never accomplished anything. Is this really how it ends? At the last second, she changes her mind. Undead swoops in and saves her. He refuses to let his only chance at dying die. He takes her to his hideout, planning to keep her there until he figures out how to trigger the worst possible unluck, a death so extreme it finally kills him. Meanwhile, a group is tracking Undead and Fuko. They know where he's heading and have orders to apprehend Fuko after confirming her ability. At the hideout, Undead theorizes about how Fuko's powers work, searching for a way to maximize their effect. Fuko gets creeped out and tries to escape. During the chase, her beanie falls off, revealing her extremely long hair. Undead stops, stunned by its length. Fuko explains she hasn't been able to get a haircut because anyone touching her would suffer her unluck. Undead drops everything and decides to help. Fuko panics, but he explains that the unluck only activates once he lets go. He pulls out tools and starts cutting like a seasoned barber. When he's done, Fuko is too shy to look. After some convincing, she finally does and is amazed. Undead is thrilled, not because he helped, but because he held her for 15 minutes. He's certain something really terrible is coming and eagerly waits. Right on cue, his head gets chopped off. The group arrives. Their leader orders Undead's head sealed in a capsule to stop his regeneration. Fuko is cuffed at the same time. Everything happens too fast for her to react. The leader offers little explanation, but it's clear they hunt people with powers, negators. He explains they prepared for Fuko's ability, which is why they're wearing gloves. He believes Undead planned to use her for evil despite Fuko insisting otherwise. She explains that Undead just wanted to die and breaks down in guilt. Suddenly, Lightning strikes the goon holding Undead's head, another effect of Fuko's unluck. Undead breaks free and attacks. The leader claims Undead isn't skilled in combat. Undead finds that funny. Maybe he's rusty now, but in the past he was a menace. He explains he keeps a cork in his head to seal away a century of battle experience. Without it, things would get ugly. In moments, the goons are defeated. The leader grabs Fuko and threatens to kill her unless Undead surrenders by handing over his head. Undead doesn't hesitate and chops it off. He barely reacts. Fuko is devastated. People keep dying because of her, and she can't take it anymore. As Undead throws his head over, Fuko runs up and pecks him, loading it with intense bad luck. The leader catches it, unaware he's holding a disaster. Undead restrains him. Fuko runs clear, and a meteorite crashes down. After the impact, Fuko fears Undead is gone. Then he crawls out of the rubble. Fine. She's relieved. Undead thanks her, admitting he'd never experienced a meteorite death before and loved it. Fuko introduces herself, and Undead admits he has no name. He's fine being called Undead, but Fuko isn't and names him Andy. Andy doesn't mind. Then a thought crosses his mind. He's onto something weird. Fuko is instantly creeped out, starts running away again, and Andy chases without hesitation. Andy catches up with Fuko in an alleyway. He tells her that if a kiss could do that much, then sleeping together would have an even bigger effect. Fuko has to think fast. She doesn't want her first time to be with some Tarzan-looking dude, so she comes up with a quick lie, saying the key is likability. She tells him about her granddad, who she once kissed, but all that happened was that he sprained his ankle and ended up just fine. Fuko explains that the more she likes a person, the bigger the unlucky events become. She adds that if he tries anything funny, she'd only end up hating him, which means he wouldn't get a proper shot at dying. Andy buys this and figures he can't let her die until that happens. He starts walking away and orders her to follow him. Andy takes Fuko to an armory-type place and gives her armor. It's obviously heavy, but he says it'll protect her from any attacks, especially since she's already a target. Fuko asks who the guys from yesterday were, and Andy tells her they're an organization that captures unidentified mysteries like themselves. He also tells her to prepare, because another group might show up today. He believes they're packing people similar to them, individuals who negate the rules of their world, known as negators. He adds that 50 years ago, he was caught by these negators, and they really did a number on him, keeping him locked in a lab for years. Andy ends up scaring Fuko with what they might do to her, and she quickly puts the armor back on, saying they should run immediately. Andy takes Fuko on a road trip, even though he has no idea where they're headed. Fuko feels like a burden, but Andy pats her head to encourage her and promises that nothing will happen to her until she falls for him and gives him a massive unluck that'll finally end him. Fuko immediately shuts that down, saying she'll never fall for him and that his hand on her head is just making her more annoyed. Just then, the sky cracks open and Andy goes on alert, telling Fuko that the negators have arrived. A Terminator-looking figure warps in and lands a heavy blow on their motorcycle, sending Fuko flying and smashing Andy pretty badly. Fuko sees Andy in such a horrible state and runs toward him, but a blue eye suddenly flashes and she starts running backward until she bumps into a really handsome guy. She wonders if he's a friend or an enemy, but even when she tries to move forward, she realizes she can't move her legs at all. Void reminds Shen that their orders are to eliminate unluck and capture undead, but Shen wants to chat with Fuko instead, openly rizzing her. Andy suddenly rockets out from under Void and attacks him, but stiffens up and falls. Fuko assumes it's Shen's doing, but Shen denies it. Andy's legs grow back, but he still can't move. Void punches him, sending him flying. When Andy lands, he realizes he can move again and starts clocking Void's power. Fuko tells him it's Shen, since she also can't move, but Andy knows that isn't it, since she can still move her upper body. He explains that both guys are eternal targeting retainer-type negators. They might seem similar, but their ranges and abilities are different. Void paralyzed his entire body, while Shen stopped Fuko's will, though Andy still doesn't know exactly what either of them negates. Andy approaches Void and gets punched again, but this time he punches back, damaging his fingers. But that doesn't stop him. They keep trading blows, but Andy is clearly taking more damage. Fuko asks Shen if they'll keep getting chased by people like him forever. Shen tells her it'll only happen if she gives them the slip, as she did with the meteor. That stunt raised her threat level from 5 to 8 out of 10. He adds that even if she escapes them, there'll be other dangerous negators hunting her down. She asks why they aren't hunted too, and right then, Void punches Andy's head clean off. Bro is getting cooked. Shen starts telling Fuko about the Union, even though Void is against it. The Union is a special team made up of 10 negators, and once you're a member, you're exempt from being hunted as long as you carry out assigned missions. Fuko gets excited, thinking she has found a way out, but Void shuts her down, saying all the seats are already taken. He has stopped her movement completely at this point and adds that any negator who isn't part of the Union is automatically labeled a Uma, a monster that throws the world into chaos. He tries to hit her, but Andy swoops in, grabs her, and lands as his body regenerates. Andy likes the idea of joining the Union, so he decides to end Void and Shen and take their seats. Fuko agrees and places her bare hands on Andy to give him some bad luck, then backs away. Andy moves toward Void and Shen, and almost immediately, a train comes crashing down on them. Unfortunately, only Andy takes damage, while the other two remain untouched. Andy goes flying into a nearby building, using the time to analyze their their abilities. He realizes that Void negates movement based on how his body suddenly froze, making his powers unavoidable. He still doesn't know anything much about Shen's power, so he stays hidden to figure it out. Just then, he spots a bunch of dynamites counting down. It explodes instantly, bringing the building down. Seeing this, Fuko runs into the mess with Andy's sword, thinking it might just be her fault. Void gets up first, notices Andy's hand, and goes straight for it, only for Andy to show up behind him. By the time Void realizes, it's too late. Andy bites off his finger and uses his regenerative power to fire the half-torn body part straight through Void's head, ending him. Just then, Shen finds his way to the scene. He is surprised to see Void dead. Andy tells him he's next, but Shen points out that Andy already has a seat secured, so he doesn't really have to. However, Andy says he wants one for Fuko too. Even though he still hasn't fully figured out Shen's power, he attacks anyway. Shen takes a stance, Andy sees an opening, plans to strike, but ends up doing the exact opposite. Fuko arrives to see Andy and Shen fighting, but it looks more like sparring. Every move Andy makes, Shen blocks it perfectly, like he can predict everything. Andy gets pissed and asks Fuko to throw him the sword. He's starting to understand Shen's ability. It's almost like Shen can read his opponent's mind and tell when they want to attack. When Fuko throws the sword, Shen is taken by surprise. He can't see her, so he couldn't predict it. Andy realizes this is his weakness and tries to strike, but suddenly freezes. Shen walks away from him but still has his back turned to Fuko. She tries to sneak attack Shen, but he dodges, causing her to fall right in front of Andy. Andy is upset at Fuko, knowing that since they're both in Shen's line of sight, they can't touch him. Shen asks which of them will be joining the Union. Andy says Fuko should, and they can do whatever they want with him. Fuko is against this. She knows Andy was tortured by the Union in the past, but Andy doesn't care as long as she's safe. With no other option, Fuko decides to give him a massive unlock that could end him, believing it's the only way to save him. She starts undressing, intending to go all the way with Andy. Shen bursts out laughing. He thinks they're hilarious, but also a great duo. So instead of splitting them up, he gives them information about another negator who'll be at a beach in Russia. If they take that one out, there'll be 2 seats open for both of them in the Union. He tells them to watch out for a red tie, then walks back into the portal. As Shen leaves, Andy drapes Fuko's clothes back over her and warns her never to resort to that again. He orders her to follow him, saying they're heading to Russia. He already has a plan to get there without a passport. A girl locates Andy and Fuko's boat out on the ocean. Meanwhile, Andy's having a really good time, but Fuko is not. She is still traumatized by everything that has happened. Andy doesn't care and drags her out to enjoy the boat ride anyway. Just then, an attack is launched at their boat, but Andy manages to dodge it. The attacks keep getting more intense, forcing Andy to use his bullet parts. He cuts at his wrist and fires the body part holding a grenade straight at the enemies. Imagine losing a fight because your opponent used his wrist like DoorDash. When everything finally settles, he tells Fuko that it was the Union and that you can identify them by the tiny symbol on their clothes. Void and Shen had it too, and so did the guy who experimented on Andy, known as Unbreakable. Andy also tells Fuko about a girl who is part of the Union. She once captured his head with an invisible barrier, and he adds that if they ever go up against her, it'll be really bad for them. Even then, Andy doesn't let it bother him and casually aura farms on the deck. This dude's level of calmness should be studied. Meanwhile, Gina is still watching their boat like you stalking your crush's Insta stories. She thinks to herself that Andy was the only man in this world she was ever able to love and immediately releases an attack that lands directly on Andy's boat. She knows Andy will be fine and wishes that he would find his way back to her. Underwater, Andy notices that Fuko is trapped beneath the wreckage. He swims over, cuts his hand, and launches it upward, pushing the debris away and saving her. When Fuko regains consciousness on the half-destroyed boat floating on the surface, Andy tells her to raise her arms because they're about to get caught. Just then, a bright light shines on them, and they both put their hands up. After Andy verbally surrenders, the light shuts off, and suddenly, the ocean begins to rise. Turns out, he had done CPR when Fuko was passed out, so her unlucky effect is happening. There is an explosion and they are both shot up into the air, but fortunately, they land on the warjet. Andy pulls out his sword and does a quick draw slash that boosts his arm's repair powers. Then the jet suddenly falls into the foggy area, and when it comes out, Andy and Fuko are now in control. Andy tells Fuko that once she masters her unlock, it won't just cause random accidents anymore. Instead, they will be able to understand what triggers certain levels of severity. With that, they fly straight toward Lake Baikal. After some time, the jet begins to self-destruct, launching Andy and Fuko out. Andy holds on to Fuko as he attempts a 5-point landing, telling her not to worry, while Fuko is straight up panicking. When he hits the ground, Bro breaks almost every bone in his body, folding like a lawn chair, but still manages to catch Fuko. They quickly hide in the nearby bushes. They have already arrived at the lake in Russia, and Andy warns her to be careful, reminding her that they need to watch out for the Union member they are supposed to take down. Since Fuko is overly excited, Andy allows her to go sightseeing while he goes to find his army buddies to help them fight the Union member. Fuko is scared. She worries that the member they will face might be OP, but Andy reassures her that he will handle it easily, especially since he plans to join the Union with her anyway. He then asks if there's any food she can't eat, mentioning that one of his friends runs an amazing restaurant and he wants her to try it before they leave. After that, he pushes her toward the beach and heads off. As Fuko walks out, two men try to rizz her up, causing her to panic and run away, knowing she can't let anyone touch her. After running for a while, she notices a girl drawing on the beach. Fuko becomes fascinated by the girl's artwork, and when the girl notices her, she gets excited about meeting another Japanese person and invites Fuko to paint with her. Fuko tries to decline, but the girl keeps persuading her until she finally gives in. They paint together for some time, and eventually the girl asks Fuko whether she likes change or prefers things to stay the same. The girl explains that she personally doesn't like change, which is why she loves art, because it stays the same. She then turns to Fuko for her answer. Fuko asks for a little time to think, and the girl agrees. They continue drawing until night falls. When Fuko finally finishes, the girl comes over to look at it, but Fuko feels shy, worried the girl will laugh since she went a bit freestyle with it. The girl promises she won't laugh, and Fuko shows her the drawing. The girl is left speechless. When she asks Fuko to explain it, Fuko says that since the moon and stars are the only things in space, she decided to draw some company for the moon and all that sentimental stuff. She also uses that moment to answer the question about change, saying she likes change because she was able to change herself thanks to some odd guy she met. The girl listens quietly, then walks toward the sea, letting her hair down. The lamp immediately goes out, and she steps onto the water, floating effortlessly. The vibes were too peaceful. That should have been a red flag. She ties the ribbon she removed from her hair around her neck, turning it back into a tie. The water begins to rise, forming a platform beneath her feet. Andy suddenly rushes in, charging straight at her, but she easily creates a barrier that blocks his attack and sends him flying back to shore. Barrier said, "Sit down." Fuko now realizes that the friendly girl was actually Gina, their target. Andy lands happily and tells Fuko that Gina is the girl who captured him 50 years ago. Gina requests her beret from the Union, stating that she'll toy with Andy and Fuko until the UMA scan she originally came to perform is complete. Steps begin to form from the platform, and she walks down toward Andy and Fuko. She already knows their plan to end her and take her seat in the Union, and she is fully prepared to fight them for it. Meanwhile, Shen is really excited about his previous fight with Andy. Bro is mentally replaying it like a Spotify playlist, but Mui tells him to stay focused. She informs him that she has received reports that Gina has already met Andy and Fuko and is preparing to battle them. However, Shen is not worried. He trusts in Andy and Fuko's ability. Back in Russia, Andy is carrying Fuko on his back, and when Gina approaches, Fuko asks Gina her age, since she was the one who captured Andy 50 years ago, yet she still looks the same age as Fuko. Gina takes it as a compliment, but Andy immediately bursts her bubble by spilling that she is 66 years old, having captured him when she was 16. Fuko is shocked, and Andy continues by talking about the Union's anti-aging tech. Before he can finish his sentence, Gina shuts his mouth with her telekinesis. She warns him not to say such things, insisting she is eternally 16. She then pushes his sword up toward his face, cutting it off, and tries to take it as a souvenir, but it vanishes. Andy realizes that this fight is not going to be easy, especially since Gina has invisible hands. Fuko is worried about Andy, and when Gina notices their interaction, she grows jealous. She tells Fuko that she fell for Andy first, explaining that even though they didn't meet under good conditions, she later apologized after being put in charge of overseeing him, claiming she was only following orders. Andy didn't take it to heart. Instead, he saw it as an opportunity to learn more about his abilities and told her that once he escaped prison, they should have a rematch. Gina thought this was cool and fell in love with him. However, Andy escaped 10 years later and completely vanished from the Union's radar for the next 40 years until he met Fuko. As Gina continues talking, Andy throws grenades at her, but she remains unscathed and keeps speaking. Sis just gained generational aura points. She says that Shen ruined her plan to find Andy first, but she's glad he sided with Void, because thanks to that, there's now a free seat for Andy at the table. Andy responds by releasing a bright flash to blind her, then immediately attacks, but her barrier still holds. Gina pushes him back and smashes off one of his legs. Andy dips into the woods, still trying to figure out Gina's abilities, so all his earlier attacks were basically for the plot. After he regrows his legs, Fuko asks about his army buddies, but Andy tells her they're all dead, meaning it's up to him alone to handle Gina. He retraces everything Gina has done since the beginning and concludes that her ability involves hardening objects. Meanwhile, Gina continues attacking him. She throws her beret, slicing Andy cleanly at the waist, but Andy just regrows his lower half and lands. Gina is furious that Andy seems more concerned about Fuko than their fight. She squeezes his lower half, preventing him from moving, and demands that he give up Fuko. Andy refuses, so Gina decides to take his head just like she did years ago, claiming that if she does, he'll be hers forever. By now, Andy has already figured out what Gina negates. He gives Fuko a heads up before slicing slicing off his own head to use as bullet parts. While in the air, he grows a new body, then explodes it, shocking both girls as human juice spills everywhere. Andy explains that Gina negates change, like your phone refusing to install the latest iOS. Even her invisible attacks work by negating the change in the air itself. As his head falls, he can finally see all of her invisible hands. Fuko catches his head just in time as Andy announces that Gina's ability is unchanged. Gina remains confident, saying that even if he understands her power, there is nothing he can do about it. Andy knows this too, which is why he's putting all his faith in Fuko's ability. He regenerates, but does so through Fuko's shirt, so they can make as much skin contact as possible. When Gina sees this, she is pretty upset. She tells Fuko that in 20 years her melons will droop, while she herself will always remain the same. Andy disagrees, pointing out that Gina is an external targeter. He explains to Fuko, who is confused, that negators come in two types: self-targeting types like himself, who can only use their abilities on themselves, and external targeting types like Fuko and Gina, who can use their powers on others but not on themselves. Gina refuses to accept this, claiming her timeless body is proof she's different. However, Andy points out parts of her body that are already sagging. Annoyed, Gina uses her invisible sword formed from her beret to slice off Andy's legs. This turns out to be an advantage for Andy, who uses the blood to rocket himself into the air, dodging Gina's invisible hands, which are now visible thanks to the blood all over them. Gina grows increasingly frustrated, and Fuko clocks something. She points out that Gina is speedwalking toward them despite having a barrier around her, even though running would have been more effective. Andy realizes this too, and says all they need now is some truly terrible unluck. As he says this, his head slams into something invisible, causing him to fall onto the elevated sea. Gina tells him he is interfering with an investigation, and immediately afterward, red lasers rain down on them. Gina explains that the Union is investigating a Uma believed to be hiding in the area and that they have been scanning the lake. She adds that she is only doing this reluctantly to meet her quota, but she is tired and wants to get it over with. She then switches her target from the Uma to Fuko. She really wants to go back to how things were with Andy, and since Fuko likes change, she decides to give her the greatest change of all: death. She attacks again, and Andy blocks with his sword, but he can't hold out for long. He breaks off his leg and retreats, spilling blood all over Gina. After regrowing his legs and landing, Andy tells Gina that death is rightfully his and that he will keep rizzing Fuko until she falls hard for him so they can seal the deal and it'll lead to his demise. Until then, Fuko isn't allowed to die. Andy then notices a trail of blood leaking from beneath Gina's barrier. When she attacks again, he tells Fuko about the hole in the barrier, and if he can slip through it, he can defeat her using the unluck he has been charging up the entire time. The problem is that the hole is incredibly small.
That's what she said.
So they need a plan. Meanwhile, Gina is still actively attacking. Andy bursts free from her invisible hands and throws his sword at the barrier. It bounces back and slices his leg. Andy splashes blood all over Gina's barrier, blinding her. Fuko then places the sword beneath the barrier and jumps on the end, resting against Andy's back, shifting the hole forward. She immediately throws Andy's head straight into the opening. Everything happens too fast for Gina to react. The force slams the barrier into the woods, and Andy is confident the unluck will follow him. Immediately, the device hovering above the sea activates and launches an attack. Once everything settles, the floating sea collapses back to normal, nearly drowning Fuko. She swims to shore and rushes to check on Andy and Gina. Gina is badly injured, and Andy wants to finish it but can't bring himself to do so. When Fuko arrives, Gina goes full Demon Slayer villain mode with sob stories and all. She talks about how badly she wanted to change, but how the Union basically controlled her life. In the end, Gina finally admits that she may have been wrong to believe the Union's goal was to stop change. Andy pulls her into a hug and kisses her, and she passes peacefully. Afterwards, Fuko just keeps crying and crying. Andy had taken her to his friend's restaurant. He pours her a cup of alcohol and, as consolation, reveals that Gina had always had a death wish. He explains that back when he was locked up, every time she came to his cell, she confessed that she didn't like unaliving people just to stay alive and would rather be dead. That was when Andy promised to end her once he got out. He said it as a joke, but Gina was genuinely excited about it. He tells Fuko that her powers help Gina and thanks her for it. Fuko becomes determined to make sure no one else suffers as Gina did, so she tells Andy that they should both change the Union. Andy immediately agrees. He lets her know that the Union's welcome wagon should be arriving soon, so their plan is to dissolve the Union from the inside. Fuko feels a little hopeful, and just as Andy is about to make a toast, the roof above them cracks open. A huge beast grabs them and transports them straight to the Union. As they fall, Fuko sees the round table and calls Andy's attention to it, but he has other plans. He bites his fingers off and fires them like bullets at the members seated at the table. His way of saying hello. Each of them effortlessly defends themselves. When Andy and Fuko land land in their seats, Juiz welcomes them, and Shen is excited to see them. Tatiana, on the other hand, punches Andy away. She has beef with him for unaliving Gina. Billy tells Tatiana to calm down, reminding her that fighting between members is forbidden. To stop things from intensifying, Juiz controls Andy's hand and forces him to hold his sword to Fuko's neck, while Tatiana nearly blasts Billy away. Tatiana apologizes to Juiz, explaining that she doesn't want to end Billy. Andy also gives up, so Juiz closes her face shield and releases their arms. With everyone finally seated, Juiz calls on Apocalypse to proceed. An ugly-looking book thing opens and produces 6 new quests. Apocalypse explains each quest and the rewards attached to them. While it's still talking, Fuko grows curious about what it is, but when she asks Andy, he tells her to just listen and save the questions for later. The 6th quest is the most difficult, capturing Uma Spoil. It requires 3 participants, and the reward is the location of Negator Unrepair. Apocalypse gives them a time limit to complete the quest, or else the penalty will be the addition of Uma Galaxy. Juiz then asks Nico to analyze the data they just received. He does so and informs her that the quests they can currently handle are the first 3, since they already have some information on the Uma habitats and know how to counter them. He suggests they give up the last quest, since they don't have much information on it and could only end up losing members. Based on this, Juiz announces that they will only take on the first 3 quests and will accept the penalty. Still curious about Apocalypse, Fuko asks Top about it. He tells her it was the first artifact they discovered on Earth. He explains that when negators occupy every seat at the round table, it opens and assigns them unreasonable tasks with rewards and penalties. Fuko takes this opportunity to speak up, saying they don't have to blindly follow whatever is asked of them, referring to how Gina suffered because she couldn't change anything. She points out that the 4th quest involves capturing a negator and fears they will continue treating people the same way they treated her and Andy. She appeals to their human side, trying to talk them out of it. Juiz calmly interrupts her, mentioning how many times they have failed and how new rules keep getting added to Earth, from language to race to death to sickness and several other concepts. She explains that every 3 months, new penalties are added even without their involvement, which is why they interfere. By completing quests and earning rewards, their forces grow stronger, allowing them to someday take down the creator of their world, who forces all of this upon them. Fuko is still unsatisfied, so Juiz tells her to become number 1. She explains that leadership of the Union is granted to whoever achieves the most results, meaning Fuko would have to surpass her to take that position. Andy, tired of listening to all that BS, climbs onto the table and grabs Apocalypse, violating it as he asks which quest is the hardest. Apocalypse frees itself and informs him that it's the 6th quest, Uma Spoil. Andy immediately accepts the quest and chooses Shen to accompany him. Before Shen can protest, Apocalypse adds their names to the quest. In the Union's dressing room, Mui helps Fuko get dressed, but Fuko avoids body contact as much as possible. Moi introduces herself as Shen's assistant and wishes Fuko luck on the quest. When they step into the hallway, Shen is chasing after Andy, begging him to put some clothes on. Andy bumps into Fuko, and suddenly magma erupts from the walls and burns him. Even then, he refuses to get dressed and insists on going on the quest completely naked. Shen explains that this isn't possible since the whole fit is required. The suit itself is bulletproof and sturdy. The necktie grants access to public services and also has the ability to translate languages, and the emblem is necessary to participate in quests. Andy still refuses to put anything on. While he is arguing with Shen, an alarm goes off and an announcement is made that an Uma has taken over a member and escaped. Its location in the building is announced and members are ordered to capture it. Unfortunately for Uma clothes, the floor it's headed to is the same one Andy and the gang are on. Moi explains that the Uma latches onto a person's body and transforms into the clothes the person most desires, bewitching them and taking full control. Suddenly, the possessed person pops up from behind Andy and punches him, but Andy responds with a resetting headbutt, knocking the guy out. Moi mentions that when the body an Uma has taken over can no longer move, it detaches and latches onto someone else. As she is saying this, the Uma leaves the girl's body and latches onto her. She attacks Andy and Shen, but they play along with it, while trying to figure out how to detach it from Mui. Feeling bad for Mui, Fuko removes her gloves and touches her, but the clothes hit Fuko away. Just then, a brick falls onto Moi, knocking her out. The Uma clothes leaves Moi, and Fuiko knows it will target her next since it prefers females. Before it can, Andy swoops in and carries Fuiko away, causing the Uma to latch onto him instead. When Moi regains consciousness, she apologizes to Shen, but he reassures her and even praises her fighting skills. The clothes on Andy try to form into something but end up frustrated, scolding Andy for having completely unachievable requirements for the kind of clothes he desires. Andy insults the clothes, and they get into a mini argument. Suddenly, the stroke of unluck from touching Fuko activates, sending an electric wave through the floor and shocking Andy. Nico apologizes from below, saying there was an artifact malfunction. The clothes finally take a definite shape on Andy, officially becoming his. An announcement is made that Andy has defeated the Uma and has been promoted to seat 9.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right. What the
the dog doing?
Shortly after, Nico receives a report on Uma Spoil's location. It's New York. The trio begins their road trip, and they have already arrived in the States. Fuko reads about a confirmed case of a rotting corpse wandering the streets. The corpse is reported to be from the town of Longing, which is where they are headed. Shen suddenly drops his head by Fuko's window, scaring her. He is outside because Andy refused to let him ride with them, so he clung to the roof instead. Fuko invites him inside, and he immediately appears in the back seat. Fuko asks what Shen thinks about the decayed guy in the city. He responds that he doesn't know how the dude got there, but he is sure that Uma Spoil and his legion of homemade zombies are in Longing. Fuko is worried that they might not be able to catch the Uma, but Shen reassures her, saying their investigators already checked the town ahead of time, so they are sure it's there. Fuko questions whether the investigators all made it back, but Shen doesn't respond. Instead, he plays the recording he received from them, and everyone hears that they didn't survive. Fuko is already traumatized just from listening to it. Later that night, when they take a break, Shen goes to Fuko, who is still awake, and tells her not to worry, as he and Andy will handle Spoil. Fuko refuses and insists on helping because the reward for defeating Spoil is the location of Unrepair, and she assumes Spoil might have a clue on how to help Andy die. Fuko asks Shen what his motive is for joining the quest, and he explains that it is a difficult mission and he hopes to see Victor, the god of victory. The next morning they arrive at the village. Shen suggests they proceed with caution, but just as he finishes talking, Andy pulls out a missile and fires it at a wall, saying it's in the way. Zombies emerge from the fog. Andy confirms that they cannot be reverted to their human selves, then shuts all the windows and drives straight into the zombies, knocking them out of the way. The truck immediately comes to a stop inside the village. Andy jumps out and cuts off an arm and a leg, demanding to know where Uma Spoil is. Since they are zombies, they don't respond, so he starts ending them, moving swiftly with the help of his blood ring. After defeating most of them, he notices one zombie who hasn't fully spoiled yet and brings her to the others, hoping she can lead them to Uma Spoil. Fuko wants to go along, but Shen immediately stops her. He reminds Andy that he warned them to proceed with caution, but Andy doesn't see the difference. Shen explains that Umas are different from negators like them, because Umas themselves are the rule. He reminds Andy of his ability, which activates when he looks at a target from a certain distance, and Fuko's, which activates through physical contact, telling Andy that Umas are not the same. He warns that Andy shouldn't attack an Uma with the intention of figuring out its abilities or rules mid-combat, because its ability has most likely already activated. Shen continues, explaining that most Umas impose their rules on anyone who steps within their range, without exception. Andy apologizes for his reckless move, but Shen asks if he feels strange in any way. Andy says he doesn't. However, Uma Close alerts him that there is something written on his stomach, and it's a timer. Shen and Fuko check themselves and find nothing. Shen concludes that Andy must already be within Spoil's target area. Fuko panics, unsure of what to do, while Andy sits down, saying he will just wait to Spoil. The others try to talk him out of it, but he tells them to calm down, knowing he won't be taken out easily. When the countdown ends, Andy's right hand begins to spoil, followed by half of his face. The group realizes that once someone reaches the curse's time limit, they are automatically zombified. Shen tries to figure out another way to locate Spoil, knowing they can't rely on the zombie girl. Just then, she taps Andy and speaks in zombie language, which he can understand now that he is half zombie. He translates for the others, revealing that she knows where Spoil is and will lead them there only if Andy helps her fulfill her dream of walking down the aisle. Andy is ready to turn her down if Fuko sees it as cheating, but Fuko finds it funny and gives him the go-ahead. Shen is the only one concerned that it might be a trap, but Andy doesn't care and leaves with the girl to find her address. Shen calls after him, reminding him that they must capture the Uma, not unalive it, or they will fail the quest. While he is still speaking, Fuko notices a nearby hatch opening. A small boy peeks out, sees them, and quickly runs away. Fuko follows him underground, calling out, but the boy keeps running. She is confused about why he isn't zombified and continues chasing him. Suddenly, a blue eye flashes and she starts running backwards until she crashes into Shen. He is upset with her for not thinking about the consequences of her actions and for acting just like Andy. Shen warns her not to go any farther, explaining that if the tunnel is also within Spoil's range, then the boy is already cursed. The boy appears again with several other children, holding a gun. He shows them the timer on his stomach, and Shen notices that his timer has more digits. The boy is cautious, believing that Fuko and Shen might be working with the Uma. Fuko tries to convince him that they're on his side, but he doesn't trust her. With no other option, Fuko runs toward the boy and hugs him, entering the danger zone. Shen has no choice but to follow her inside. Meanwhile, Andy walks his zombie bride down the aisle surrounded by a zombie audience. The girl thanks him for helping her achieve her dream, then tells him to save the others and make sure to end the remaining zombies as they are suffering. She She points toward an angel statue and tells Andy to smoke it out of existence. Andy throws his sword at the statue, causing Uma Spoil to burst out and crash through the building. Andy also emerges protected from the impact of the crash by the zombies. He fires his body part bullets at the bell, slamming it on Uma Spoil's face. When that doesn't cause much damage, he does it again, then calls out to the zombies, telling them that if they have ever wanted to beat up the Uma, they should follow the sound of the bell. Immediately, an army of zombies rushes toward Uma Spoil like it's Black Friday and he's the last PS5. Meanwhile, in the underground tunnel, Fuko gets to know the kid Ken. She asks what happened and why they are still okay. Ken narrates that 1 week ago, while they were all going about their normal business, a dark ball suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the city and started speaking. It then zombified everyone, and their teacher led them to safety. Now we know, if a floating orb starts yapping, your whole country is cooked. She said there were some food portions down there, and that they should stay there until help comes. She also added that she herself would not get zombified, not until she finds a handsome guy who will walk her down the aisle. She advises the kids to always focus on their dreams when things get tough, saying that as long as they have their dreams, they are not going to spoil. After that, she leaves them. Fuko already feels bad for them, and one girl, Mi, starts to cry, causing Ken to hurry over to her. Her number is rapidly decreasing, so Ken pats her on the head and encourages her, saying that help is on the way. He also reminds her of her dream, and she gets really excited and starts talking about it, and her numbers begin increasing. Just then, the tunnel shakes because of the trouble happening on the surface. Meanwhile, Andy, alongside the zombies, is doing his best to end Uma Spoil, but Spoil is OP. Shen and Fuko come out of the bunker, surprised by the commotion. When Andy spots them, he throws his bride to them to keep her safe, saying that their wedding isn't over. Shen catches her midair and Ken informs the others that their teacher is back. Fuko feels even worse, realizing that the zombie girl is the kids' teacher. The kids all hug her, happy to see her. While the reunion is taking place, a zombie runs past Fuko and her skin touches it. When the zombie goes to attack Spoil, a sign breaks off and lands on Spoil before ending the zombie. Andy gets an idea. He shouts to the zombies that there is a change of strategy and that they should go touch Fuko, saying they will become bombs and cause more harm than they are doing now. The teacher reacts first, hugging Fuko. Despite feeling emotional, Fuko takes off her gloves and touches the girl. After that, she runs straight towards Spoil. Ken tries to run after her, but Shen stops him with his powers. The girl keeps going, and as she approaches Spoil, he grabs her, squeezing her. The ground breaks, he loses balance and falls onto a gunpowder storage building, causing a massive explosion. Spoil takes a bit of damage, so Annie tells the others to keep the pressure up. Fuko swings into action and touches every zombie as they walk past her. Shen puts the children back in the bunker, telling them to wait there. Meanwhile, the zombies all latch onto Spoil and start causing him serious damage with the unluck they got earlier. Once all the zombies are gone, Shen shows Andy that they too have gotten cursed, and he is angry. He tells them they have no choice and suggests they end it instead of capturing. Shen refuses, saying they will fail the quest and everyone will be mad at him. Suddenly, everything starts floating towards Spoil, who is inhaling all the zombies. Fuko starts flying too, and Andy catches her, using his sword to keep them from being pulled away. Andy cuts himself and uses his blood force to rocket them to a safe distance. Spoil then changes form. It's now uglier. Shen questions whether Andy has figured out Uma Spoil's rules while fighting it, and Andy says he has an idea. He explains that Uma Spoil's main body can spoil any organic matter aside from living things at will, and for living things, the timer has to reach 0. Spoil tries to laser attack them, but Shen controls him to redirect it. Moe then reaches out through the emblem and informs them to avoid Spoil's laser at all costs, since the statue it hit became decomposed immediately. Shen relays the information. Uma Spoil flies into the air, asking them why they have refused to see the beauty in spoiled things. He shoots his laser beam again, and this time it touches Shen's gloves and Andy's hand. Shen's gloves fall off, and Andy cuts off his arm before it spreads. Andy realizes how dangerous this is, because it doesn't zombify, it deletes you. He knows dragging the fight out won't do him any good, so he charges at Spoil, but as he gets in close proximity, he starts spoiling quickly. Uma Spoil knocks him down and starts throwing punches at double speed. When he stops, he notices that Andy hasn't died, making him realize that Andy is a death negator. It's frustrating, but he knows that the rate of decay of his new form isn't something Andy's regeneration can keep up with. He turns to Shen and Fuko and notices they are waiting to be spoiled. He stretches his neck toward them, saying they should be grateful for being able to experience something this beautiful. Shen gets an idea and steps away for a bit. However, Spoil assumes he is dipping and tells him that even if he runs out of range, the timer will still continue. He then keeps talking about his Thanos ideas to Fuko, saying that his effect actually brought change to humans and forced them to fight to stay alive. He says his change is necessary because it brings new life, and that other living things accept it, but only humans fight it. He wonders why humans place so much importance on a body that won't even last on its own for a century. Bro is actually making me depressed. At this point, Andy regains consciousness. Fuko responds that it's because humans have dreams, regardless of their age, and they are not going to let his loser rule ruin any of them. She says that even if her body were to spoil, her heart wouldn't. She proves it by showing her timer, then tells him her dream, and the timer resets. Spoil is shocked and pulls away, while Andy is impressed. Fuko runs to help Andy while Shen comes flying straight back at Spoil and gives him a solid smack. He also says his dream and his timer reset, and then just keeps on adding figures because his dream is sick in a good way. Spoil gets smacked hard by Shen and immediately withdraws his head, recoiling backward as if shocked that someone could even touch him. Andy and Fuko shout warnings at Shen from the ground, telling him not to get too close or else he will spoil, just like everything else that approaches Spoil. However, Shen has already pieced everything together. He calmly explains that when Spoil brought his head close to Fuko earlier, she didn't spoil at all, meaning the spoiling effect only surrounds Spoil's body itself and not his entire presence. That realization changes everything. Shen also points out that with his Neo-Ikinko staff, he wouldn't even need to approach Spoil directly. Shen points the staff straight at Spoil and commands it to extend. The staff instantly stretches across the gap, slamming into Spoil's face with force and pushing him backward. Without hesitation, Shen follows up and smacks Spoil again. Spoil thinks to himself that he should dodge or move away, but instead, his body betrays him and moves closer to Shen, lining him up perfectly for another hit. This behavior is the result of Shen's ability, which forces his target to perform the exact opposite of whatever action they consciously attempt. Spoil realizes something is seriously wrong. He concludes that since he can't figure out Shen's ability, retreating would be the smartest option, but once again, his body ignores his intent and moves him even closer to Shen, earning him another smack from the staff. His free will just got unsubscribed. Any conscious thought that enters the mind of Shen's target is instantly negated, making his abilities untruth. Shen continues whooping Spoil repeatedly while calmly explaining to Andy how Spoil might be captured. Shen explains that Spoil must have a core hidden somewhere within his body. However, Shen can't simply remove it because of the Spoil energy constantly surrounding Spoil's body. To defeat him properly, they need a way to completely stop or neutralize his spoiling ability. Shen keeps smacking Spoil without giving him room to breathe. Spoil attempts to retaliate by firing his laser beam, but the attack doesn't activate at all. Shen grows visibly excited, thanking Spoil for possessing such overwhelming power, because with that amount of power, Shen is confident he will finally get to see Victor. Meanwhile, Andy and Fuko rack their brains trying to come up with a solution to Spoil's ability. Andy suggests reducing the amount of moisture in the air, reasoning that spoilage is heavily tied to moisture, so he decides to create more explosions. Before Andy gets up, he casually pinches Fuko's stomach and calls it fat. This earns him a slap. Andy tells Shen to create some distance because he is about to make use of gunpowder. While still talking, the ground suddenly opens beneath Andy, and he falls straight through it. This is a result of the unluck he got from the slap. Shen rushes over to check on Andy, but that brief distraction gives Spoil an opening. Spoil kicks up a massive dust cloud, completely blinding Shen's vision, and uses the cover to escape. As Fuko pushes her way through the thick dust, an idea suddenly clicks in her mind. She shouts to Shen that they could take Spoil into space, since space contains no moisture. Shen immediately approves the idea, but also points out the major drawback. Anyone lifting Spoil into space would have to endure the spoiling effect the entire time until they arrive in space. None of them could survive that, except for one person, Victor. Shen tells Andy to pull the card from his forehead and summon him. Andy agrees, but not without conditions. Shen retracts his staff and throws it down to Andy. Shen then contacts Moi to locate Spoil, and she quickly provides the update. Andy hears this too, and extends the Neo-Ikinko staff from beneath Spoil, launching both of them upward toward space. As they ascend, Andy pulls a card from his forehead and tosses it to Shen, telling him to make sure he wins. When Fuko sees the card, she is worried that Andy may completely lose control. Shen reassures her, saying that he wants to see it happen because Victor once brought victory to countless battles. Out in space, Spoil mocks Andy for assuming his abilities won't work in space. He fires his laser beam, blasting a chunk of Andy's face clean off. To Spoil's horror, Andy simply regenerates it. His form begins to change, and it becomes clear that the being before Spoil is no longer Andy. Victor has emerged. Spoil grows genuinely afraid for the first time. Victor uses his division bullets, slicing off his own finger, which regenerates independently and attacks Spoil. In no time at all, Victor defeats Spoil and extracts his core. He then cuts off the hand holding the core and sends it flying back towards Shen on Earth. Back on the ground, the children are finally freed. Shen instructs Ken to take the other kids and keep moving, assuring them that members of the organization will rescue them soon. Ken agrees and leads the group away. Fuko watches them leave, still worried, but Shen tells her to trust in the organization's capabilities. Victor's gift soon arrives as promised. The severed arm regenerates into Victor right in front of them, shocking Fuko and leaving Shen visibly impressed. Bro respawned like it was nothing. An awkward silence hangs in the air before Shen takes a fighting stance and instructs Moi to beam up Spoil's core from Victor. After that, Victor asks what year it is and Shen answers. The dent on Victor's forehead begins to spark, but he resists it. He tells Andy that that he has been in charge for far too long, wasting his life away, and that there is no chance he's going to ever die. Suddenly, Victor starts moving toward Fuko, already aware of the plan to help Andy die. Shen steps in front of her and greets Victor, but Victor isn't interested in small talk and kicks Shen out of the way. Shen realizes that even though his ability is active, it has no effect on Victor. Victor punches Shen again, breaking both of their limbs, but while Victor heals instantly, Shen does not. Victor follows up by using his parts bullet to immobilize Shen completely. Fuko immediately touches Victor to apply her unluck, but it has no effect. Shen barely manages to call for help from Mui, while Victor gains memories of Fuko's powers from Andy and mocks her, calling her pathetic for thinking it would work on him. Victor tells Andy to give up on trying to kill him and then attempts to use his bullet parts on Fuko just to make Andy miserable. Fuko desperately calls out to Andy, begging him to come back, but nothing happens. Victor confidently claims that Andy could never overpower him. Shen interrupts, stating that it could happen because he witnessed Andy's willpower firsthand during the fight against Spoil. Shen begins spinning, declaring that he will honor the two promises he made to Andy, to protect Fuko and to defeat Victor. He launches himself forward and lands directly in front of Victor and knocks him away. Shen knows that victory is impossible. The best he can do is stall for time until the others arrive. As Shen collapses from weakness, he sees the sky crack open. The others fall through the opening, and Shen finally feels relieved. Juiz attacks Victor, and they are evenly matched. Then she instructs Top to get Shen and Fuko away. Victor uses his division bullets to create multiple versions of himself and tries to finish Fuko, but Top quickly swoops in and carries them away. Victor is impressed by Top's speed, but then explodes, creating even more copies of himself. He kicks the Nyoe Kinko staff to block their escape, but Shen, still weak, commands it to shrink, and it does just in time for them to slip through. Top drops them at a safe distance but keeps moving. Fuko thanks him, then asks how they are supposed to stop Andy. Top admits he doesn't know either. Fuko has an idea and asks to be taken back to Andy. Top is skeptical, telling Fuko that Andy isn't the guy she used to know anymore. Fuko asks Shen for Andy's card, and he hands her a gun first so she can protect herself, then gives her the card and wishes her luck. Fuko immediately starts racing back to Longing, even as Top keeps calling out for her to stop. He asks Shen to stop her too, but Shen is fine with her trying, saying that if it were easy to stop her, she wouldn't be alive today. Top is frustrated but has no choice, so he runs after her, picks her up, and takes her back to Longing. Meanwhile, the others are still trying to contain Victor, and no matter how many times they take him down, he keeps regenerating. Mid-battle, Victor begins analyzing each of their abilities. Top and Fuko arrive, but they can't tell which one is the real Victor since they all look the same. Fuko scans each of them until her eyes catch Victor fighting Juiz. Top doesn't understand how she recognizes the real Victor at first, but Fuko points out that she can see remnants of Uma clothes on him. Top decides to trust her judgment, but warns that he won't be responsible if anything happens to her. He takes her straight to Victor, who is still going at it with Juiz. Fuko takes off her bra and jumps on him, burying his face under her shirt. The union members are completely speechless, and even Victor is caught off guard that his duplicates immediately disappear. Fuko explains that as long as she stays latched onto Victor like that, a massive stroke of unluck will hit him no matter how much she dislikes him. She also plans to stick the card into him once he weakens. Juiz asks how long she will have to stay like that, but Fuko says she doesn't know, since she has never clung onto someone she hated for that long. Juiz then asks if, were it Andy, the stroke of unluck would come instantly. Fuko agrees, so Juiz changes the strategy, saying they need to bring Andy's personality back, even if it's only for a split second. Victor mocks them, confident that Andy will never surface because he is doing a great job restraining him from the inside. He creates more duplicates using his bullet parts just to attack Fuko, but the union members protect her, destroying each one. Victor questions why they are protecting Unluck, saying that if she dies, they gain 2 open seats and can find stronger negators to fill them. Juiz calmly tells him that those who lack justice and ambition cannot influence the actions of others, and Bro basically says, "Yeah, you're dumb."
You're a dummy, Rachel!
You're dumb, Rachel. You're so fucking dumb.
Juiz orders the other members to wipe out the copies and protect Fuko. Shen, having recovered a bit, hears the chaos and calls out to his staff. The fight continues as the members give it everything they have. Tatiana shouts at Fuko to focus on persuading Andy to come out instead of looking around. Fuko starts talking to Andy, but Victor immediately gets pissed off and tries to fire apart bullets straight at her. Top jumps in, pulling the smoothest move in all of anime history by kicking his Victor's hand away. He tells Fuko to keep going and that they've got her, only to nearly get jumped by a copy. Top narrowly dodges, but the copy predicts his movement and fires a part bullet at him. Seeing this, Fuko knows she has to act fast. She doesn't want to put the Union members in any more danger. She realizes she doesn't even know much about Andy, since they only met a month ago, but she remembers how he saved her life and decides to return the favor. She suddenly pulls out the gun Shen gave her and shoots Victor in the head, where the card was, immediately pressing her finger against the wound to stop him from healing. She keeps yelling for Andy to come back, begging him to just make contact with her even for a moment. She promises him the biggest stroke of unluck to bring him back. Andy's consciousness starts to awaken, and he finally appears. Fuko is overjoyed, but Andy doesn't want to waste any more time and pulls her in for a kiss. The copies vanish. As they break the kiss, Fuko quickly steps away, and Andy teases her, saying they'll continue later, causing Fuko to immediately get embarrassed. Fuko runs a short distance and warns everyone that they need to leave immediately because the unluck is coming. Juiz orders everyone to fall back, and they retreat to the other side of the wall. Victor tries to stop them, but a blue eye flashes, freezing him in place. Shen is watching Victor on his staff from the other side of the wall. Meteorites begin to fall, and Victor calmly takes the L. The area is obliterated, then flooded, but the members are protected by a barrier set up by Nico. After the town is completely destroyed and things settle temporarily, Fuko rushes back to check on Andy. The water is already rushing back, but she continues going and places the card back into his head, hoping Andy will pull through. Unfortunately, she gets swept away as the water fills up. Days later, Fuko wakes up in a room at the Union quarters with Andy by her side. Overcome with emotion, she throws a pillow at him, scolding him for risking his life without telling her the plan. She mentions that if the round table members had not shown up, he would have been gone for real. Fuko breaks down, admitting that if things hadn't worked out, she would have been alone again. Andy pats her head and apologizes. He tells her that in the darkness, all he could hear was her voice and that it made him happy. He then mentions that the meeting is starting soon. As he is about to leave, Fuko asks who had left the toy for her, and Andy tells her it's from Tatiana. He also mentions that the kids from Longing visited and explains that the orphanage will take care of them until they turn 18, after which they will find their own paths. While he is talking, fire suddenly falls on him. It's the unluck from touching Fuko's hair earlier. They arrive at the round table later, and Fuko apologizes for being late. Juiz calls on Apocalypse, and the meeting begins. In a warehouse somewhere, Unrepair is holding Unseen hostage, and he is bleeding. Unrepair finds Unseen's ability fascinating because it activates when he closes his eye. Unrepair informs him that he cut him earlier and planted a homing device inside him, just to make sure he doesn't try to run away. He then promises to stop the injury if Unseen joins him, but if he refuses, the wound will never heal until Unrepair is dead. After everyone gathers at the round table, Juiz summons Apocalypse to announce the quest results. From the date, Fuko realizes that she has been asleep for quite a while, and Andy tells her it's normal due to all the hyper stuff she pulled in the last battle. Apocalypse begins reading out the quest results. The first quest was successfully completed, and they are rewarded with an additional seat. They also receive rewards for their other quests that were successful. These rewards include the location of Negator Unburn, language unification to English, where all the language memories of all non-negators were wiped clean. Shen decides to test this by reaching out to Moi, who is working out. He asks if she is wearing her necktie, and when she confirms that she isn't, he removes his as well and speaks to her in Chinese as he usually does. She doesn't understand him at all. Their next rewards are the location of an artifact, as well as the location of Negator Unrepair. Fuko is happy that they have finally found Unrepair and tells Andy that he might actually get a real death this time, but Andy doesn't seem happy about it. However, the Union failed their last quest, which was to capture Unseen. Andy says they already had an inkling. All the guys who went to investigate Unseen ended up dead, their bodies found in a deserted area, all of them having bled to death, so he assumes Unseen was taken by Unrepair. Regardless, Apocalypse gives them their punishment. Uma Galaxy emerges from its mouth, terrifying most of them. It moves up to the surface, and WayCS calls on Move to transport everyone there as well. The ground beneath their feet breaks. Move's teleportation always feels personal. Andy grabs Fuko, and they fall through, landing violently on the surface in Australia. Why do they never land gently? This isn't WWE. Since nothing seems to be happening at the moment, Fuko comments that it's not as bad as she expected. Juiz tells her to calm down, explaining that since it's a Uma summoned by Apocalypse, it will definitely have rules that lead humanity to ruin. Galaxy keeps moving until it reaches space, then it explodes, creating new planets and an entire galaxy that starts filling up the sky. It's beautiful. Still, Juiz remains cautious and tells Nico to confirm the situation. Nico gets to work immediately, calling out to his buddies who, in turn, feed him information.
Sir! Sir! Grab me that human. But sir, we're still on the road. Grab me that human.
When Nico disconnects, he tells the others that Galaxy comes along with systems involving myth, days of the week, and even the concept of aliens. Unfortunately for them, they are being invaded by aliens at that very moment. Huge ships hover overhead and an alien named Ak steps out. He is the alien leader and announces that they are invading Earth to make it their new home. Juiz steps forward to meet him as humanity's representative. Ak tells her to surrender, promising to use humans as a labor force instead of wiping them out. Juiz refuses and orders him to withdraw his forces. Ak responds by blowing up a nearby mountain and causing a bit of chaos. He explains that they did their research and discovered that humans are nothing but losers with horrible IQs, looking down on them completely. He adds that for his people to take over Earth, humans must die. This is his justice. Justice.
Justice. Justice.
Unfortunately for him, justice is exactly what Juiz negates. Her ability is injustice. Ak watches in horror before falling to his knees in defeat. Juiz turns to Andy and Fuko and tells them that this is what a penalty entails. They only survived because of her ability, but depending on which member is involved, it could easily be game over. Is Sis glazing herself?
Bruh.
She then informs them that this marks the 99th penalty added and they can't afford any more, which is funny coming from her, because we clearly remember her earlier agreeing to carry out only 3 quests and accept the penalty. So what changed? She continues by explaining that they uncovered a stone tablet at the same time they found Apocalypse. The tablet has 101 slots, and each time they receive a penalty, 1 slot gets filled. Once all the slots are filled, the final penalty, Ragnarok, will be released, and nobody wants that. She also reveals that Apocalypse will not open again until all seats at the round table are occupied. That means they must find an 11th member, or they will receive another penalty in 3 months before a new quest is issued. Ak has to cough to remind them that he is still there. Juiz gives him a message to relay to every other being across space, warning them to keep their hands off Earth. When he is finally allowed to leave, he makes sure to spread the terror. That was the first and last time Earth was ever attacked, as all alien contact would cease afterward. Juiz then informs the others that their next target is Unrepair. Andy volunteers to go since he knows Unrepair's attacks can be fatal. Juiz approves and assigns Tatiana as his support, also asking Fuko to tag along as well. The trio then heads down to Brazil. Andy and Fuko visit a shopping mall, and Fuko is panicking because there are a lot of celebrities around. When Andy steps out, his dressing just doubles his riz, leaving Fuko completely speechless. Andy teases her for a bit, clearly enjoying how embarrassed she is. During their ride there earlier, Andy tells Fuko about a black market auction that is set to take place, an auction that deals with negators, umas, and artifacts which the organization hasn't been able to manage. He adds that the people behind it are mafia from all over the world and that they always hold it in random locations to make tracking difficult. He fills her in on a few more details and finally mentions that they might likely see Unrepair there too. Andy explains that they will infiltrate the ship as guests using the passes Nico made. Since they have to look the part, they decide to disguise themselves. Fuko steps out of the dressing room wearing the dresses Andy picked for her, but every single one of them reveals too much skin. Knowing her ability, she can crash the whole ship if she ends up wearing any of these. Fuko flatly refuses to wear them, but Andy argues that they need the surface area to ensure big strokes of unluck occur. However, Fuko is concerned about the others. As Andy continues picking out new dresses, he tells her that he won't let anyone touch her, though he admits it's fine if she feels too embarrassed showing that much skin. He hands her another set, and Fuko notices that he has slipped in yet another skimpy dress. This triggers a memory of when she asked Juiz why she was assigned to the mission, since she didn't see herself as being much help. Juiz told her that she was acting based on her own vision of justice, and that her justice was to protect the planet and the people on it. She explained that this was also the reason she ordered Shannon Void to end Fuko, because she believed that if Fuko was left unattended, she would endanger the planet. However, after the recent fight with Victor, Juiz realized that if they could control Fuko's unluck, it might be powerful enough to kill their god. But since Fuko's power is basically useless at this point, she wants her to work with Andy more closely and do whatever it takes to fall in love with him. Back in the present, Fuko finally settles on a dress. It isn't as exposing as the others, and she looks good in it. Andy approves and shows her how to stand confidently. He turned into a runway coach for 5 seconds. When they go to book a room, Andy notices how tense Fuko is and suggests they take a walk since they still have some time, which she gladly agrees to. While they're out, Andy suddenly brings up her stroke of unluck with Victor, where she buried his face in her chest, saying he wants some too since it was Victor who experienced noticed it, not him. Same brother, same. Fuko immediately runs away and Andy pursues her. She tells him she only went that far out of necessity, but he still insists. Fuko suddenly stops and takes off her gloves. Andy keeps running toward her, saying her unluck won't work because he is fully clothed. Fuko then calls out to Uma Clothes, who opens up and exposes Andy's skin, allowing Fuko to touch him. Andy is immediately hit by Truck-kun and sent flying into the sea. Fuko apologizes to Uma Clothes for getting him hurt too, promising to give him a ball of yarn, his favorite food. Andy experiences a combo-type stroke of unluck and even gets bitten by a shark. When he washes up on shore, Fuko apologizes again, but Andy ignores the apology and starts telling her about Victor. Ro thinks he's in therapy because he's lying on his back. He says that Victor claimed to be the original, and that it might be true, because Andy doesn't remember anything from his childhood. Without the card, he can't keep himself together. He warns Fuko that Victor might surface again and cause her trouble. Fuko tells him not to worry, promising that she will use her unluck to save him as many times as he needs. She stretches out her hands to help him up, but when he touches them, she realizes she isn't wearing her gloves and quickly pulls away, apologizing. Suddenly, Tatiana crashes down onto Andy as another stroke of unluck. She informs them about the plan to go undercover on the ship in search of Unrepair, while she infiltrates from somewhere else. She warns them not to blow their cover until Unrepair is located. Later, she gives Fuko a bow, a remodeled version of the necktie, to match the dress she will be wearing. She also tells them that the passes Nico made have them registered as a married couple. Later that night, they arrive at the dock and board the ship. As the ship departs and before they head into the auction room, Andy reminds Fuko to keep her cool. Once they are granted access, Fuko hears a man speaking badly about the negators and umas that are going to be sold, and she almost reacts, but Andy stops her and tells her to stay composed. She also overhears someone say the negators are easier to find now. Andy explains that this is due to language unification. Since all non-negators had their memories wiped, they now speak one language while negators don't, making them stand out. They find an empty seat, and Andy continues, explaining that the only reason they can communicate with Shen, who is Chinese, is because of the necktie. Fuko realizes how bad this reward has been for negators and feels sad. She wonders which fate is worse for them, being taken to the organization or being sold here. Andy tells her that they either die during a quest or become some fat dude's plaything. Either way, it's bad. Fuko feels bad for whoever is about to be put up for auction, wondering what kind of life they've lived and comparing it to the hardship she herself endured. Andy tells her that the only reason he joined the Union was for the chance to kill the source, and Fuko agrees. Meanwhile, somewhere on the ship's deck, guards ask Unrepair, Rip, and the girl with him, Latla, to return inside because the area is restricted. Rip refuses, lying that he only wanted to show his girlfriend the stars. One of the guards insists and points a gun at Rip. Rip asks Latla if he is going to die there, and she confirms it. He covers Latla with his jacket and runs past the guards. They feel something off, only to realize that Rip had slits their throats. After losing a lot of blood, they drop. Afterward, he whistles for his group to show up and they are spat out by a fish. Latla tries to return the jacket to Rip since they still need to look the part, but he tells her it doesn't matter because they are going to cause trouble right away, saying she can throw it away. They're there for the negator being sold. Rip tries speaking to Feng, but Feng only understands Chinese. Even when Rip switches to Chinese, Feng ignores him and walks away, and the others follow. Latla tosses the jacket into the sea, unaware that Tatiana was stuck there listening. Tatiana then contacts Andy and informs him of Rip and his gang's presence. She doesn't realize it's Unrepair and describes everything that happened to Andy, with UES also listening in. Juiz explains that Unrepair's organization operates similarly to the Union, collecting negators by force but with different goals. While the Union seeks to kill their god to be freed from the rules, Unrepair's team seeks revenge against the world. She adds that if they collect negators who are useless to them, they dispose of them. Andy and Fuko take their usual fighting positions and move in to go after Unrepair. Fuko and Andy immediately head for the negators being held captive, and Rip and his gang are moving toward the same target. They push forward through the cruise ship, fighting their way past guards. The commotion alerts Tatiana, who rushes toward the battle. Rip and Latla quickly realize the Union members are nearby from the chaos erupting around them. One thing is clear, they intend to complete their mission no matter what, and they won't give up the negator they came for. Amid the disorder, a certain negator quietly swipes a set of keys from a guard and attempts to escape. The guard notices and is about to react, but the negator activates his ability, freezing the guard in place. He's a timid kid, struggling to maintain control as he holds the guard still. Just a few days ago, he had been living a normal life. He can't understand how he was discovered, as he had been careful to keep his ability hidden. One day, however, he began hearing everyone speak in English. Panicked and confused, he soon found himself targeted by the mafia. Somehow, it all led to him ending up on the auction ship. The kid, Chikara, fears escape is impossible, since his powers deactivate the moment he stops looking at his target. As panic sets in, his focus slips and his ability fades, allowing the guard to move again. The guard remarks that Chikara is far too valuable to be allowed to escape. Just as he raises his weapon to shoot, he suddenly drops dead. Rip is responsible, having arrived with his team. At a glance, he figures out Chikara's ability, the power to restrict the movement of anything within his field of vision, as long as he himself remains still. Rip finds the ability intriguing and states that he can't allow the Union to have him. Chikara doesn't understand what he's saying, as he doesn't speak English, and wonders whether these newcomers are there to save him or not. Their next action answers that question quickly. Creed pulls out a machine gun and says he'll fire at Chikara. If Chikara can activate his power and save himself, good. If not, he'll die. Latla points out that Chikara could be a valuable asset. Rook counters that if Chikara can't even save himself, then he won't be useful to them. His power may be impressive, but if he dies, it will simply be transferred to someone else. Creed begins a 5-second countdown as Chikara panics, staring down the barrel of the gun. When the countdown ends, Creed unloads on him, riddling the area with bullets as if fueled by personal hatred. When the dust clears, Andy is revealed, having leapt in to shield Chikara. He shares his location with Tatiana, who is eager to jump into the fight. Andy studies Rip's team, who don't seem bothered by his presence at all. Fuko arrives soon after and immediately places one of their neckties on Chikara so he can understand them. As Andy continues analyzing their opponents, Rip closes the distance in an instant and slashes open Andy's neck. Andy attempts to chop off his head and regenerate, but his hand refuses to move. Rip explains that any attempt to heal damage inflicted by him is pointless, as his wounds will remain until Rip himself dies. Rip demands that they hand over Chikara. He plans to unalive him and pass the ability on to someone less cowardly. Still, Andy and Fuko refuse to give up. They charge at Rip's group, and Fuko does the honors by cutting off Andy's head. Andy launches himself at Rip and lands a surprise attack before he can react. At the same time, Tatiana joins the fray, engaging Creed and Feng. With Latla's help, using her ability to deflect attacks, Rip holds his ground. The fight slows slightly, and Andy remarks that he's lost interest, as Rip's and Latla's abilities aren't enough to bring him down. He says he doesn't care what Rip and his team are planning. Rip feels Andy would fit better with them than with the Union, but he doesn't push the idea. Rip praises Fuko for having the resolve to follow orders and cut off Andy's head, contrasting her bravery with Chikara's cowardice, which he finds disgusting. He's bent on unaliving Chikara to give his power to someone else, believing it would be a major contribution to their cause. Their ultimate goal is to raise an army and conquer nations one by one. Fuko speaks up, questioning why they choose to take out their rage on the people of the world instead of God, the one truly toying with them. Rip dismisses the idea, unwilling to risk his life on something like that. Andy launches another attack, only for Latla to deflect it once again. This time, although the sword gets deflected, the blood on it passes through and splashes all over her makeup and fancy dress. Andy notices her powers didn't stop the blood too. Rip returns to his original objective and moves to finish Chikara. He hurls his blade at Chikara, and Andy instantly jumps in front to take the hit. Surprisingly, the blade pierces straight through Andy and continues toward Chikara, but just before it reaches him, Fuko steps in and takes the blow herself. The blade stops, but at what cost? Andy is furious and on the verge of losing control, but Fuko tries to calm him, insisting that the wound isn't that bad. It clearly is. As guards swarm the area in large numbers, Rook decides to retreat. He notes that Fuko didn't need to take the hit, though he doesn't care much either. He states that she's useless now, since her wounds won't heal as long as he remains alive. The guards surround them with guns raised, ready to open fire at the slightest movement. Chikara steps forward and speaks to them, explaining that Fuko is badly injured and desperately needs medical attention. He insists that he's the one they want and begs them to leave the others alone. The guards ignore him completely, uninterested in his plea or the noble sacrifice he wants to pull off. They have no intention of letting anyone go. As the guards prepare to fire, Chikara recalls his final moments with his mother. She had told him to cherish those who show him kindness throughout his life and to help them when they're in trouble. Remembering her words, Chikara finds his resolve. Just as the guards unleash loads of bullets, he activates his power, standing perfectly still as everything freezes in place. Not a single bullet lands. He promises himself not to be afraid anymore and to help them, believing that Fuko was hurt because of him in the first place. Tatiana takes on Creed and Feng at the same time, and she holds her own pretty well. Creed tries everything in his arsenal, but it's of no use against Tatiana's suit. However, Feng uses his ability, and surprisingly, it is able to create a dent on the suit. Tatiana is surprised. I mean, it's Nico's invention. Andy gets her status, and then updates her on their own situation too. He mentions that Fuko has been badly hurt by Rip, and because of his unrepairability, she can't be healed until Rip is dead. They have barely an hour to find and unalive Rip. Hearing that Fuko is hurt angers Tatiana. To add to it all, Creed taunts her about it. Back when Andy and Fuko first joined the Union, Tatiana had a lot of pent-up anger and hatred for him. This was all about him offing Gina, and she was bent on getting revenge. Later on, she called Andy out for a one-on-one fist conversation. Andy wouldn't back down from such a confrontation. They got to the training ground where fighting freely is allowed. Tatiana mentioned that she would never accept him as one of them, although others may have. She really needed to avenge Gina. She started attacking Andy, and he evaded the attacks as best he could. Tatiana pointed out that Gina had feelings for Andy, and what did he do? He trampled upon them. As Andy heard her take on the situation, he didn't deny it. He admitted that he knew about her feelings for him, and he unalived her anyway. This got Tatiana more pissed, and she said that that's even the more reason reason she has to get back at Andy. Her attacks grew wilder and more violent, and she almost crushed Fuko with a stray punch. Luckily, Andy jumped in and rescued Fuko. Tatiana stopped her attack as the realization hit her. She could have hurt Fuko badly if Andy hadn't stepped in. The whole scenario got her upset, and her suit got all charged up. Nico and the others alerted Andy of how dire the situation was. The suit wasn't built to protect Tatiana, but to protect others from her. Tatiana had just lost control and became unstable as a result of everything that happened. She was about to release her ability, the very one the suit was built to restrain, and Nico advised Andy to take Fuko as far away from the area as possible. The entire building went on an emergency evacuation from the floor Tatiana was on. It was a literal code red. However, Fuko refused to go. She tried calming Tatiana down, trying to talk to her, but Tatiana would rather she just left. Fuko finally revealed that she was behind Gina's death. Her unluck killed her. She was in tears while explaining this. She mentioned that Andy was only fighting to protect her. Fuko had vowed to work hard and make up for Gina's loss and expressed that she really wants to know more about Tatiana and Gina. Fuko made the final sentence, showing her desire to be Tatiana's friend. Luckily, the heart-to-heart moment actually worked, and Tatiana's tantrum got under control, so did her power. From then on, Fuko worked her way to being close to Tatiana, who wasn't that welcoming at first. They gradually grew on each other. Back to present time, Chikara just realizes if he deactivates his powers, the bullets would definitely hit them. However, Andy straps Fuko, grabs Chikara, and leaps away so fast that bullets don't land. He apologizes to Tatiana for not being able to back her up, as his top priority at the moment is to get Rip. But Tatiana mentions that there's no need. She asks them to get Fat away from her, to the top deck. That being said, she gets ready to release her power. She's pissed that Fuko, the only person she considers a friend, was hurt, and she has to make them pay. With that, she charges up a crazy amount of her energy. While Creed and Fung are stuck with Tatiana, about to meet their demise, little do they know, Rip and Latla make their escape. Latla wonders if they're really leaving without taking anything, but Rip is way ahead of her on that as he took loads of stuff. Creed immediately starts firing at Tatiana, but it doesn't do anything to her suit. He then tries to gas her up through the openings of the suit. Tatiana was just a kid when her power first manifested. She had just turned 5, and it was her birthday. After the birthday song was sung and she blew her candles, the tragedy struck. She was later found amidst the rubble of their house and her lifeless parents. The neighbors alerted the police, who hurried to the scene. However, scared and confused, Tatiana has escaped and been on the run until the mafia captured her. She was put on the auction market, but as she was being priced and almost sold out, Billy came to her rescue. After wiping out everyone in the room, he approached Tatiana. Tatiana, with a poker face, straight up asked Billy to put a gun in her mouth and shoot her. She wanted to be dead. Instead, Billy stuck a cake bar in her mouth. Tatiana's face lit up, and she tasted it, and she quickly ate it all up. Billy happily explained that he learnt about her power, the ability to produce an untouchable barrier from her skin and hair. The only way the barrier would open is if her mouth is open. Basically, just the area of her mouth wouldn't have the barrier. This really won Tatiana over. It was quite thoughtful of Billy, as Tatiana had been fed liquid food through a tube for quite a while now. Something different was definitely a good idea. He handed other bars. From then on, she followed him back to the Union where Nico made her suit. The suit contained Tatiana's barrier, which grew bigger each year. Nico had warned that releasing her power would cause a huge recoil. It'll be pretty disastrous and could be a weapon. His advice to her was that she should be careful. Tatiana didn't understand what Nico meant when he mentioned that her power could be a weapon, and Billy explained. He states that her powers wouldn't just cause harm to people at random, and mentioned that a day would come when she'll use it to protect someone important to her. On that day, it wouldn't be an accidental discharge. Andy gets to the top of the deck alongside Fuko and Chikara. When they're there, he alerts Tatiana, who has been charging up for her release. She mentions that she'd rather destroy everything than allow Rip escape. They hurt her friend Fuko, and she wouldn't let that happen again. With that, Tatiana releases her stored up power, Untouchable. It begins its destruction, taking Creed, Fung, and anything around easily as the barrier widens. The cruise ship suffers the effects and gets destroyed. Andy finally sets his eyes on Rip in the midst of the wreck and is ready to finish the job. Andy gets into an exchange with Rip mid-air. He fires off his finger pistols, but every shot is cleanly diverted by Latla's abilities before they can land. Rip retaliates by kicking chunks of debris toward him, pushing back just as aggressively. Andy reacts instantly, destroying the debris before it can reach him. He points out that they absolutely cannot let Rip and Latla escape because he knows for a fact they already have an escape plan prepared. If they manage to get away, then that can only mean one thing: Fuko will surely die. Andy explains that their current plan relies entirely on Chikara's powers, and hearing this makes Chikara tense up. He forces himself to focus, determined not to let them down. Their first attempt works, but it still isn't enough to actually take him out. Chikara pauses them and Andy fires another finger shot. Rip, however, is sharp enough to quickly analyze what they're trying to do and predict their next move. Even so, it doesn't end up helping him much, as Andy had already spun the bullet, curving its trajectory and slipping it past Lottla's defenses, landing a hit on her instead. It isn't a fatal hit though, and before they can make another move, Rip suddenly blitzes out of Chikara's line of sight. In an instant, he reappears above them and launches another attack. Using an artifact in his possession, Rip unleashes massive blade-like strikes that slice through the air. The attacks look genuinely horrifying, the kind of thing that would make any average person freeze up in terror. As expected, Chikara becomes too fidgety to properly use his power, and Andy is forced to sacrifice his lower half to keep them alive. They survive the attack, barely, and Andy apologizes for pushing things that far. Rip immediately mocks Chikara, calling him a scaredy cat and looking down on him for his fear. Before Chikara can gather himself and prove Rip wrong, Rip once again dashes out of his line of sight and spams yet another wave of gigantic blades. This time, Chikara manages to pause the attack just before it hits them, but the pressure is immense. Even the slightest blink or loss of focus would mean instant death. They use that frozen moment to strategize. It's painfully clear that they won't be able to win unless they figure out a way to deal with Lottla's powers. Andy admits that he hasn't fully figured out how her ability works, but he has a theory. He believes that curved attacks and feints might slip through her defenses, somehow flying under her radar. Even then, their options are limited. Their only real chance is to rely on Fuko's unluck, but for that to work, they'll need to get close enough to Rip to drag him into its effects. Just then, Tatiana arrives to back them up. Using her power, she expands her barrier and lifts Andy and the others higher, closing the distance between them and Rip. However, Rip has kept his mouth covered the entire time, and at the worst possible moment, he spits out blood directly into Chikara's eyes. The sudden distraction disrupts his focus just long enough for Rip to act. He immediately follows up with another barrage of those diabolical blade attacks. Fortunately, Andy reacts fast enough to intercept the attack with one of his own. Still, he's running out of strength. He signals to the others that this will be their final move. Andy cues Fuko, and she understands immediately, leaning in and kissing his cheek. Rip looks confused by the gesture, but it doesn't really matter. Andy quickly explains the situation to Chikara, pointing out that a meteorite is now headed straight for him as a result of Fuko's unluck. However, Andy isn't certain that the meteorite alone will be enough, since Lottla's powers might still interfere. Because of that, he explains that they'll need Chikara's ability to make this work. Right then, Rip launches his next attack. Andy lets go of both Fuko and Chikara and takes the hit head-on. Despite being brutally cut up and barely holding together, he still manages to push through and reach Rip. Chikara panics, doubting whether he can actually pull off what Andy is asking of him, but Andy reassures him. He tells Chikara that people like him, Fuko, and Tatiana always come through when it matters most, because they genuinely have what it takes to help others. At that moment, the meteorite comes crashing down. Andy moves out of the way just in time, but Rip only looks confused. He doesn't bother dodging, confident that Lottla's abilities will protect them from anything. As he expected, the meteorite didn't hit them at all. Fuko and Chikara, with Tatiana's help, rush toward Andy while Rip stands back, calmly analyzing the situation. Rip explains that he gave Andy an irreparable wound, adding that killing Andy would actually save him. Because of that, trying to kill Rip would essentially act as a form of healing for Andy, meaning it wouldn't work as an attack. After boasting about this, Rip turns his attention toward Chikara and goes after him. Following Andy's earlier instructions, Chikara pauses Rip just before he can reach them. Andy is already in position. He successfully maneuvered behind Rip, who is now frozen in place by Chikara's ability. Andy remains quietly outside of Lottla's radar, and because he's hidden from Chikara's line of sight, Chikara's powers don't affect him. That gives Andy complete freedom to line up a clean shot. He fires with absolute satisfaction, and the shot goes straight through Rip. Rip is stunned. Even so, he calmly accepts his fate. He admits that he's amazed there are still people willing to put themselves on the line to help others. With that, he finally passes out. Lottla quickly helps him into their escape. Before leaving, Fuko stops her and asks several questions, wondering who Lottla and the others really are and what their true objective is. Lottla simply tells Fuko to save those questions for Rip, confidently stating that he isn't dying that day. With that, they escape, leaving Fuko behind, confused and unsettled. Not long after, Andy's wounds begin to heal, confirming that Rip's power is no longer active. This is definitely good news, but Andy's regeneration is painfully slow. He's completely worn out, having poured every last bit of his energy into that final shot. The distance he was positioned at was extreme, and he had no choice but to do it that way to make the bullet effective. Andy takes a moment to commend each of them. He starts by apologizing to Fuko for not being able to protect her properly, though he praises her for handling her injury like a champ regardless. He then thanks Tatiana for helping them track down Rip. Tatiana brushes it off, saying she was just paying him back for punching him earlier. Finally, Andy turns to Chikara. Chikara barely understood what was happening, and none of it made much sense to him, but he still stepped up when it counted. Andy thanks him sincerely for that. Andy admits that he couldn't have pulled this off without all of them, and he's genuinely grateful. Real character development moment right there. Shortly after, Fuko suggests that Chikara should consider joining the Union. She quickly adds that she understands everything is has been moving incredibly fast and that it's scary, so instead, they'll keep Chikara a secret from the rest of the Union until he can make his own decision. If Juiz ever found out about him, she'd definitely force Chikara to join. Andy agrees with this plan, and although Tatiana is reluctant, she eventually accepts it too. Andy gives Chikara 1 full week to think things over. Chikara is far too shaken to decide anything right away. As they head back, he reflects deeply on everything his mother once told him. The week passes like any other normal week. Chikara continues going to school, living life like a regular kid. Eventually, the day of his decision arrives. Andy and Tatiana wait just outside his school as the clock slowly ticks down. It's almost time for Chikara to show up, and Fuko can't help but wonder if he actually will. Chikara has the option to live a normal life, and it would be completely understandable if he chose not to join them. Andy points out that Chikara would honestly be better off staying out of the Union if his resolve isn't strong enough, because otherwise he'd just end up dead. Fuko agrees, believing that Chikara deserves the freedom to live his life however he wants, since everyone only gets one shot at life. As they continue waiting, Rip suddenly appears. Andy and Fuko are shocked because not only does Rip look very much alive, he also looks like he's somehow reverted back to kindergarten. Both Fuko and Andy are caught completely off guard when they come face to face with Rip, alive and seemingly unharmed. Fuko can't wrap her head around how he survived, and what unsettles her even more is his appearance. He looks like a child. Rip casually acknowledges that they did in fact defeat him back then, and that it was undeniably a loss. Still, he explains that he is returned and will eventually revert to his original form. Despite his calm demeanor and lack of hostility, neither Fuko nor Andy has any intention of entertaining him. Andy attacks without hesitation, striking Rip hard enough to send him flying. Even after that, Rip doesn't retaliate. Andy grabs him and shakes him down, expressing his dissatisfaction with how their last encounter ended. A bullet straight through his heart isn't enough. Rip remains unfazed and instead apologizes for hurting Fuko, though he notes that she technically hurt herself by jumping in the way. He then reveals the real reason he came, stating that he brought them a gift, an artifact. Rip tosses it toward Fuko. The moment she catches it, she's overwhelmed by a horrifying vision. She sees the world crumbling apart, reduced to nothing but ruins, and towering above the destruction is a massive, scary figure. Panicking, she drops the artifact immediately. Andy rushes to her side, checking to see if she's alright before picking up the artifact himself. He experiences the same vision, a shattered world, completely destroyed, with a huge being standing above everything. Andy admits that he's never felt anything quite like it before. Still shaken, Fuko asks Rip who that terrifying figure was. Rip answers plainly, explaining that it's the very being they're all chasing after, God. He emphasizes how overwhelming and frightening the figure is, insisting that there's no way they could ever hope to defeat it. That, he says, is exactly why he and the rest of Under intend to rule the world and enjoy themselves before God eventually comes to wipe everything out. Rip goes on to explain that negators have always been the ones forced to fight, suffer, and bear the consequences, and he believes it's time to turn things around. In his eyes, regular humans should be the ones to suffer instead. He declares that Under will flip the script and make things fair within 3 months. With that, he offers Andy and Fuko a place on his team. As expected, they refuse without hesitation. Andy boldly states that if God truly exists, then it's absolutely possible to take him down. Rip laughs at Andy's confidence, mocking his resolve as he turns and leaves. Not long after, Chikara appears. However, Andy's next comment immediately makes him regret showing up. Andy casually announces that they're going to unalive God, sending Chikara into full panic mode. He tries to flee, but Andy and Fuko chase after him. Chikara uses his ability to stop Fuko in her tracks, but Andy manages to get out of his line of sight just before the power activates fully, sneaking up on him from behind. Andy reassures Chikara that he only wants to talk, and the three of them head into Chikara's classroom. Fuko is thrilled to be there, wandering around excitedly and living in her imagination as she fantasizes about a fictional character from her favorite manga. After enough fooling around, they finally get serious. Chikara asks when the world is supposed to end, referencing what Andy had mentioned earlier. Andy runs through his calculations and explains that if their quests continue as normal and they keep losing, then the end will come in April. However, if the next penalty turns out to be a full-on world-ending event, then it could happen as early as January. With it already being September, they barely have any time left. Hearing this, Chikara says there are two things he must do. First, he has to live. Second, he has to atone. To explain what he means, Chikara shares his past. He confesses that he's responsible for his parents' deaths, which shocks Fuko. It happened back when he had just started middle school. He and his parents were returning from a shopping trip, and Chikara had run ahead, crossing the road first. When he turned back to look at them from the other side, his ability activated without him realizing it, freezing both his mother and father in place in the middle of the road. At the time, he didn't understand why they had suddenly stopped moving. Then a vehicle came speeding down the road, the driver fast asleep heading straight toward his parents. In a panic, Chikara rushed back toward them, and the moment he did, his power deactivated. Everything happened at once. His father died instantly, and his mother was left critically injured. She survived for a week before passing away. Chikara recalls how his mother told him in her last words that he should grow up to be someone who takes action to help others. It was only later that he realized his own ability had caused their deaths. Living with that truth was unbearable, and he admits that he thought about ending his life multiple times, but he knew that wasn't what his parents would want. They'd want him to keep living, so he did. He survived day by day, convincing himself that simply living might somehow make him a better son. He explains that after being captured by the mafia, and after Fuko and Andy saved him, he learned that his ability could actually be used to help people. He's been searching for a way to make amends for what he did, and now he's found it. Chikara decides to join the union, promising that he won't run away or chicken out again. Just then, his friend bursts into the classroom, interrupting the moment. He's surprised to see Andy there and jokingly questions why a fully grown man is hanging around a middle school classroom, suspecting that Andy might have repeated a few grades. Chikara scrambles to explain and cover up the situation, but Andy finds it hilarious and bursts into laughter. Feeling a bit petty, Andy walks over to Fuko and starts tickling her non-stop, giving her a proper reason to laugh. He only stops when she's completely worn out and basically lifeless. Chikara's friend then shares his good news. He's been accepted into a university on a basketball scholarship. He's clearly thrilled, and Chikara is genuinely happy for him. They chat excitedly about it together until a union vehicle arrives outside. Andy immediately signals to Chikara that it's time to go, and Chikara leaves without hesitation. His friend, confused, tries to follow him, but Chikara activates his ability, freezing him in place. He thanks his friend for always being there for him and for making school life bearable. His friend struggles to move but can't, still caught by the power. Chikara promises that they'll graduate together someday if they succeed in killing God. With that, Chikara leaves alongside Andy and Fuko. His friend, still worried, runs after them when he can finally move. But Chikara has already made his decision. To make things easier for his friend, Chikara asks for his friend's memory of him to be erased. It's an incredibly painful choice, but he goes through with it. Nico carries out the request. Chikara's friend abruptly stops, turns around, and heads back inside, having completely forgotten about him. Overwhelmed, Chikara breaks down in tears, and Andy comforts him. Fuko declares how badly she wants to defeat God and asks Andy to teach her how to fight. Andy agrees without hesitation. Training begins immediately for both Fuko and Chikara, and after several months pass, the members of the union gather together, waiting for the next quest to begin. Apocalypse presents them with their next quest. Failure would attract their 100th penalty. Apocalypse mentions that the quest is for everyone, meaning every living being can participate. He goes ahead to list the quest, one after the other. The penalty is the addition of Uma Revolution. The members grasp the situation. Juiz points out that anyone is allowed to participate in the quest, adding that it simply means the quests are on a grand scale. Everyone must unite to challenge the quests, whether they belong in the round table or not. As she speaks, Billy interrupts. He has a suggestion, and Juiz allows him to speak. He mentions that, considering how serious the quest is, some of them may not survive. So he suggests they just drop nukes at the locations of the Umas in the quest. It's a terrible plan, and nobody on the table is in support. Tatiana wonders why Billy would make such a suggestion, pointing out that such explosions would cause the deaths of so many innocent people. However, Billy doesn't care much. Billy calls Juiz naive, as she's always seeking a better outcome, like there'll be a next time. He gets to his point, saying that no matter how many times they try, they'll never be able to defeat God. That being said, Billy pulls out his guns, and to everyone's surprise, he fires at them, the union members. Luckily, no one is hurt apart from Ishin. Andy and Shen immediately restrain Billy, although he doesn't seem to be trying to escape or fight anymore. It dawns on them that Billy is a traitor and has been working with Rip. Talk about a peak plot twist. Ishin needs help, and Top stresses about it. Billy mocks Ishin, but Top doesn't find this funny. Filled with rage, Top speed blitzes Billy, delivering a lethal attack. Tatiana is upset about this and says Billy deserves it, he's a traitor anyway. But to everyone's surprise, Billy survives the hit and immediately gets out of rage with Andy and Shen. He aura farms as his villainous nature truly shows. Billy wonders why they bother and worry about the lives of regular humans whom he labels incompetent. He clarifies that he'd rather utilize their lives, otherwise that'll just be unfair. As he says this, the ground below the round table cracks open and Uma comes out. It's on Billy's side. Billy announces that the round table, which he has taken with him, now belongs to Under. With him on the Uma are Rip and Latla. Billy declares that he'll be the one to kill God, and he is determined. The stare-off between Union and Under is intense, and they just seem ready to throw hands. It is clear that Billy betrayed them, but Tatiana does not want to believe this. She explains that that isn't really Billy. Earlier on, Top had delivered a death blow, but somehow Billy survived. Tatiana points out that Billy's power doesn't work that way. Billy has the ability to fire accurate shots at his targets no matter the direction he shoots at. She's really certain about it. Meanwhile, Chikara panics as he stares at the gigantic creature before them. Andy tells him to fall back, but Chikara, despite being afraid, insists that he can help. Andy says Chikara can help by not dying. Chikara finally runs off, promising to come back when he has calmed his nerves, and Rip mocks him, calling him a scaredy cat. However, Rip mentions that he's relieved they brought the creature along to scare Chikara off, as he tells Billy that Chikara was the one who got him the last time. Rip refers to Billy as boss, and now it's very clear that Billy is a traitor. Tatiana is devastated. Top doesn't waste any time after this revelation, and he goes in for another hit, building up momentum. However, this time, Billy is fast enough to evade Top's attack, which is weird. The effect of their clash breaks Billy's leg as well as Top's. Billy commends Top's ability, Unstoppable. Still, he points out that the shutoff condition is tricky. Top can't stop until a part of his body undergoes a drastic change. But Billy mentions that this isn't a setback to him in his current form, and he thanks Andy for that. To everyone's surprise, Billy's leg heals really quickly, almost as if he has Andy's powers. Juiz, Andy and Shen immediately jump him and try to take him down. Shen can tell as they fight that his ability has no effect on Billy. Another shocking thing happens as Billy ends the fight by using Juez's powers to make Andy, Juez, and Shen stand down. He controls them to go against their resolutions. Andy, who is determined to protect Fuko, targets her with his finger pistols. Juiz, who prioritizes living, has her blade to her own throat. And Shen, who is bent on fighting stronger opponents and getting stronger, feels powerless. Juiz is surprised, wondering how Billy is able to use her injustice. Billy mentions that his powers are quite useful, and he says he'll take the powers he has copied alongside the round table as he makes his leave. On saying this, Billy orders the creature Burn to swat Andy, Shen, and Juiz away. They're quick enough to evade being crushed, and the creature swings its hand. Billy asks Tatiana to come along with him. He mentions that he needs her powers and reminds her that he saved her life back then. He wants her to repay the favor, but Tatiana remembers her friendship with Fuko. Billy keeps his persuasion simple, offering to help Tatiana get back to her normal body. But Fuko steps in and even shoots at Billy. He heals instantly. Fuko says she knows what it means to have no sense of self-worth, only to have someone save you. She adds that such a person would be influential in your life, just like Andy is to her. However, she doesn't know what it means to be betrayed by the same person, and she feels for Tatiana. Tatiana is still so devastated that she doesn't say a thing. Billy doesn't prolong his offer or his stay, and he leaves Tatiana, brands her his enemy as well, and takes his leave. Burn, the creature, begins moving to the surface with Billy, Rip, Latla, and the round table. Juiz stresses that they can't let Billy get away with the round table, or they'll lose their only chance of opposing God. They have to settle this, or everything they've done so far will be for nothing. Andy mentions that he has lots of questions, however, he's on it. He confirms from Juicy that they can use any means, and when she gives the go-ahead, he calls on his tag teammate, Fuko, to join him. Juiz understands his plan, to use Fuko's unluck against Burn. She points out that the creature is extremely powerful, and wonders if they can really pull something off. Andy assures her that they stand a chance. He emphasizes Latla's ability to divert regular attacks, stating that the only way things will work is if they rely on the randomness of Fuko's unluck. Latla wouldn't be able to detect it. Juiz buys the plan. She gives an order to the Union members, stating that their top priority is to disable Burn. With Burn down, Billy and the others can't walk off with the round table. Juiz gives Nico the responsibility of treating Ishin and Top, and asks him to give his lab members control of the facility to stop Burn. Nico complies, and the lab members get ready for action. Shen and Phil are given the responsibility of protecting the artifacts at the depository, in case Billy and the others try to steal any on their way out. She asks Chikara to use his powers to stop the bleeding from her neck, and finally, she orders Tatiana to sit this one out. Fuko tries to comfort Tatiana, mentioning that she's sure there's a logical reason behind Billy's betrayal. She reminds Tatiana that Billy is a nice person. This keeps Tatiana cool, despite being sad. She requests that Fuko save Billy, and Fuko agrees to. With that, Fuko takes her leave with Andy as they chase after Burn, Billy, and the others. Everyone else gets to their different tasks, all to stop Billy from leaving with the round table. Billy and the others are on the verge of a full escape, and Rip admits that the operation turned out to be easier than he expected. Billy quickly shuts that down, reminding him that this is exactly the moment they shouldn't relax. They caught the Union off guard, but it's only a matter of time before they regroup and strike back. Underestimating the Union now would be a mistake. Rip clarifies that his ultimate goal has never been to defeat God itself. He's focused on what comes after. To be certain, he asks if Billy would betray them. Billy reassures him, explaining that unlike the so-called heroes who operate on justice, their alliance is built on shared interests. To him, that arrangement is far more honest. Elsewhere, Nico's team works desperately to devise something powerful enough to stop Burn. Nico gives them guidance, stressing that they should focus solely on their task and leave the rest to Andy and Fuko. Meanwhile, Andy and Fuko rush upward at full speed. Fuko suggests that their priority should be stopping Burn first and then trying to talk things through with Billy. Andy points out the irony in that plan, considering she shot at Billy earlier. Fuko, clearly embarrassed, admits it happened in the heat of the moment. As they continue upward, Andy adds that he also has questions for Billy, so talking might not be a bad idea after all. He notes that Rip and Billy don't seem to share the same end goal. Billy's focus on bringing laying down God aligns more closely with the Union than Rip. Still, Andy insists that before any discussion happens, Billy deserves a serious beating for making Tatiana cry. They soon catch up to Billy and the others. Without hesitation, Billy activates Injustice on Fuko, and she immediately turns her blade toward her own neck. Andy reacts instantly, placing his head in the way. The sight of Andy and Fuko together sends Rip and Latla into panic. They know exactly how dangerous the pair can be. Fuko leans in and kisses Andy on the cheek. Rip and Latla recognize what comes next. Bad luck. Before they can react, Andy's head goes flying straight toward them. It shoots directly into Burn through its mouth. Confused, Rip and Latla look on as Fuko explains that a massive stroke of bad luck is about to hit Andy, passing right through Burn. Just as she says it, Nico's team executes their plan, freezing Burn solid. Burn crashes downward along with Billy and the others. Billy remains calm, explaining that Burn will recover quickly and that this setback only bought the Union a little time. Fuko counters that more bad luck is coming, and this isn't the end of it. Right on cue, Nico's team fires a pile cannon, and with the help of Fuko's unluck, it pierces straight through Burn and impales Andy, dragging him out with it. The Union members cheer, having successfully stopped Burn. Top is safe, though he still can't rejoin the fight despite his eagerness. Nico tells him he needs to heal completely first. Ishin, however, remains unconscious with no sign of recovery. At that moment, Juiz notices something unsettling. Tatiana is missing. Andy, meanwhile, appears to be enjoying himself despite being impaled.
Why are you gay?
He calls Billy out for hurting Tatiana and promises payback. He charges forward and lands a devastating blow that would normally be fatal. Billy regenerates instantly. Andy quickly realizes that Billy has copied his ability. He immediately asks Fuko to hand over any weapon she's carrying, making sure she won't hurt herself if Billy uses Injustice on her again. Latla wonders aloud if they should intervene, but Rip refuses. He wants to see whether Billy is truly worthy of leading them. Billy then activates Top's ability, Unstoppable, accelerating at incredible speed as he builds momentum. Andy remains composed, observing that while Billy may be fast, he can still detect his movements. Billy finally strikes, sending both Andy and Fuko flying. He boasts that detection means nothing if Andy can't stop him, only for his sentence to be cut short when his leg falls clean off. Andy had slashed it mid-attack. Billy admits he's impressed, but it doesn't matter, as his leg regenerates immediately. Deciding to end the fight, Billy targets Andy's weakness, Fuko. He activates Injustice on her, forcing her toward the edge. Her true will is to live, but Injustice twists that desire into its opposite, making her want to end her life instead. She can't stop herself as she falls. Andy dives after her without hesitation and catches her midair. At that point, it becomes undeniable that Billy can copy abilities. With Andy and Fuko temporarily removed from the equation, Billy orders Burn to keep moving. To everyone's shock, Burn casually ejects the cannon stuck inside it and continues ascending out of the base. Nico's team panics, realizing they've run out of options. Juiz remains composed and tells him to stay calm. She asks whether Andy and Fuko are safe, and to her surprise, Tatiana answers. Tatiana explains that she caught them as they fell, though she isn't entirely sure what caused it. Regardless, she assures Juiz that they're unharmed. Juiz reminds her that she was ordered to stand down. Tatiana apologizes, admitting that she needed to confront Billy. Juiz then asks her a blunt question, confirming whether Tatiana still has feelings for Billy after everything. Tatiana hesitates. Juiz makes it clear that the entire operation depends on her answer. Moments later, Burn reaches the surface with Billy, Rip, and Latla. Tatiana follows soon after and confronts Billy, demanding to know why he betrayed them. Billy responds that the world can never be fair as long as God and rules exist. Tatiana tries to reason with him, but Billy dismisses her, using Injustice on her and stating that she doesn't matter. These words devastate her, bringing back memories of who Billy used to be before he changed. When Juiz asked earlier whether she still liked him, Tatiana had answered yes. Hearing this from Billy gets her upset. She releases her barrier, striking Billy and sending him flying. She never intended to hurt him, but when Billy activated Injustice on her, it reversed her will. Billy realizes the Union deliberately allowed Tatiana to confront him, and he accepts that he's been outplayed. Fuko manages to grab hold of Apocalypse. Andy points out that without Apocalypse, Billy can't receive quests or rewards. Billy knows this and is furious. As Fuko holds onto Apocalypse, it floods her mind with countless memories until she breaks down and releases it. Apocalypse explains that it holds more memories of the past than any other artifact and believes Fuko would go insane after witnessing so much. It attempts to escape back to Billy, but Phil restrains it. Andy prepares to hand Fuko over to Phil so he can pursue Billy, but Shen arrives just in time, surfing in on a cloud like he stepped straight out of Dragon Ball Z. As they regroup atop Shen's cloud, Billy announces that he'll allow them to keep Apocalypse for now. He only meets to reclaim it before the deadline. He then reveals his next objective, obtaining the Ark. He tells Andy to inform Tuiz that he won't allow her to have it. Andy is confused, having no idea what the Ark is, and Shen is just as lost. With that, Billy escapes. Andy wants to chase him down, but Juiz orders them to stand down. Enough damage has been done for one day. Juiz then states that there's an important issue she needs to discuss with the roundtable and asks all members to assemble. All the members gather, waiting for Juiz to begin. Apocalypse has been restrained and locked away, and it spends the time hurling curses and threats at everyone until Andy finally shuts it up. Wes asks Nico for a damage report, and he responds that the damage isn't as bad as it looks. He points out that taking Apocalypse away from Billy was the right decision, adding that if another fight had broken out, things would have ended far worse. Fuko is still suffering from the effects of what Apocalypse did to her, and Juiz wonders if she will be alright. Nico reassures her that Fuko will recover eventually. On hearing this, Andy rubs it in Apocalypse's face. He then asks Wes if he can ask a question, and once she gives permission, he speaks up. He explains that the first time something felt off to him was when he heard her policy regarding the quest that carried Galaxy as the penalty. Juiz had clearly stated that there was no intention of completing all the quests, instead focusing solely on strengthening their forces. Andy continues, bringing up several questionable decisions Wes has made in the past. Shen jumps in as well, voicing his own curiosity. When they fought Andy's alter ego, Victor, both Wes and Victor refer to each other by name as though they were already familiar. Shen points out that Victor hadn't surfaced in the last 200 years, making it strange that he knew Juiz at all. Even more suspicious was the fact that Victor seemed aware of Galaxy before the rule was ever introduced. Shen notes that it almost feels like Victor lived in a world where Galaxy already existed. Nico adds his own concern, wondering about the arc Billy had mentioned. According to him, the Union possesses no artifact known by that name. After listening to everyone's questions, Juiz removes her helm. The atmosphere tenses immediately, everyone going on guard in fear of her ability, but she reassures them that they are safe as long as they do not answer any questions from her related to justice. Taking a deep breath, she begins addressing their concerns. She says there is something about the world that they all need to know. With that, she reveals the truth. The world is a loop. Juiz explains that the world is caught in a constant cycle of destruction and renewal carried out by God, repeating endlessly. Events occur over and over again, never truly changing. She created the Union to put an end to this cycle. Everyone reacts with a mix of confusion and shock. Fuko suddenly realizes that the images she saw from the artifact came from a time before the world was recreated. Juiz confirms this, stating that those memories represent the history of her own inadequacy, which led to their defeat. Fuko tries to tell her that she isn't to blame, but Juiz ignores it. She explains that this is why she gathered warriors, individuals capable of defeating God. Andy questions why Juiz is the only one who knows about the loop while everyone else remains in the dark, and Tatiana agrees, pointing out that they too should know what the world was like before it changed. The confusion in the atmosphere deepens. Juiz explains that there are several ways to learn about the loop, but for her, she has relied on the Ark to experience it directly. Andy asks for proof. Juiz responds that she will explain how the world ends and how it begins again. She starts with the end. According to her, God physically destroys the planet and everything on it, and not even escaping into space would save anyone. Hearing this, Chikara freezes in fear. Juiz continues, explaining that God then creates a new planet, and sometimes particles from the old world remain scattered around the new one. She reveals that the meteorites summoned by Fuko's unluck come from those remnants. The revelation is unbelievable, completely contradicting everything Fuko once believed. Juiz concludes her explanation, stating that this is all the proof she can offer regarding the looping world. She then provides evidence from her own experience, revealing that she once had a relationship with Andy. She proves it by revealing that Andy has a mole behind his ear, something only someone very close would know. Though, in truth, it wasn't Andy she was involved with, but Victor. Fuko becomes completely flustered at the thought, and Andy tries to calm her down, though it doesn't work. Fuko asks to confirm whether the world has truly been destroyed multiple times, with YEZ surviving alone each time by using the Ark. Juiz confirms this but clarifies that she wasn't alone. Andy understands immediately and explains that it was Victor. Even as the world ended and everyone else died, Victor would not, because he is undead. Juiz confirms this. She then explains that there are only two ways to escape the rules. Either you die or you kill God. She admits that she has manipulated them and withheld many secrets, and she apologizes, taking full responsibility. She suspects that Billy's actions were driven by the leak of information about the loop reaching him. Juiz says she would willingly atone for her actions through death, but there is still work to be done. She asks them to continue working alongside her and see things through to the end. Her humility feels uncomfortable, especially since she is supposed to be their leader. Shen interrupts her, saying he would rather not see her demean herself like that. Everyone agrees. They understand what she has done and are still willing to follow her. A round table is brought in and everyone takes their seats, ready to begin. Ishin had crafted a duplicate and it fits perfectly. Juiz is surprised by their reaction, but she is also relieved. They still see her as their boss and await her leadership. Juiz takes her seat and the meeting begins. She reminds them that they currently have 4 quests. Before getting into that, however, there are several things they must first uncover. The first is the location of the round table Billy stole, followed by the whereabouts of his base. Juiz acknowledges that their goals align with Billy's when it comes to killing God, but if he is left unchecked, countless innocent lives will be lost. He has no concern for collateral damage, as shown by his willingness to suggest using nuclear weapons. Juiz Juiz lays out their priorities clearly. They must apprehend Billy, take down Rip and the entire undergroup, and recover the round table along with the artifacts required to slay God. She believes Under has already made progress in figuring out how to defeat God, and she is more than willing to learn from that. With that said, she mentions that she has a task she wants Andy and Fuko to handle. Fuko immediately responds, ready to take on the mission. Juiz explains that she wants them to investigate the legitimacy of a certain book. There is a possibility that this book contains records of both past and future events of their world. If they hope to clear the 4 quests, they will need it. Fuko fidgets, unsure if she should really be entrusted with something so important. Juiz, however, believes they are the perfect choice. She says that once they see the book, her reasoning will become clear. She presents it to them, and both Andy and Fuko stare at it, surprised. It's Fuko's favorite romance manga, To You, From Me. Juiz points out an occurrence from volume 20 of the manga that is identical to something that happened in real life. Fuko notices the similarities. Juiz also mentions another event that seems like a prediction of something that later occurred. She says they need to investigate it. Top is completely lost, since he knows nothing about the book. Fuko goes full otaku on him, ranting about how good the manga is across all 101 volumes. Then she realizes there is absolutely no information about the author. That's where Juiz steps in, explaining that she suspects the manga was drawn using artifact G-liner, where objects drawn are unaffected by the addition of new rules. That would mean the real manuscript should still be in Japanese. Juiz wants Andy and Fuko to check the status of the raw manuscript and gather intel on the author, Ano-un. Andy figures the publisher would have both things they need, but there's no way they would simply hand them over. He suggests they whip up a killer manga and present it to the publisher. With no time to waste, they get to work immediately. Maiko shows them a rune to use and leaves them alone. Fuko is stressed about writing the manga. She's already an otaku, so how hard could it be? Turns out there's a huge difference between a reader and a writer. Andy offers to handle the finishing touches and pulls up a manga pipeline to guide them. It turns out he once tried writing manga, though not as the main creator. He leaves the story draft to Fuko, asking her to pour her passion into it. He advises her to dream up a boyfriend and imagine situations with him that would make her heart race. Fuko agrees to try. 3 energy drinks later, she's still writing. She refuses to cause any delays. They need to get their hands on that manuscript as soon as possible because it might contain a way to stop Billy and his group. Andy quickly realizes she's doing it for Tatiana. Fuko doesn't deny it, but she says doing well with the manga will also help her understand her own feelings better, which will allow her to summon even stronger strokes of unluck. After more time and even more energy drinks, she finally finishes and nervously waits for Andy's opinion. Andy loves it and calls it sick. He tells everyone to get ready to draw and says he'll finish composing the storyboard in an hour. Mui, Miko, and Bax show up to help. Shen offers to assist too, but Andy sends him away since his power is too dangerous. Fuko worries about how long it will take to finish the manga, but Andy already has a solution. He gives the instruction, and Miko straps a device onto Fuko's back. It holds brainwave-operated robotic arms, allowing them to work multiple times faster. Fuko struggles to control it, but it still follows her will and ends up ripping Andy's trousers. Andy takes it in stride and gives her an hour to get used to it. After struggling for a while, Fuko gets frustrated and wants to give up, but Tatiana gives her a tip. Imagine watching herself from above. Fuko tries it, and before long she gets the hang of it. She's grateful to Tatiana. Just in time, Andy finishes the storyboard. With energy drinks massively available, work begins. Everyone goes all in while Shen works out, and Top and Ishin are completely absorbed in the 100-volume manga. Juiz visits and offers to help. Fuko sees this as her chance to yap and takes it. She tells Juiz that she reread the manga since it might be a prophetic text, but she noticed nothing hinted at Billy's betrayal or their current mission. Instead, there were awkward gaps, and the plot holes became more noticeable the closer she got to the climax. She believes the author deliberately left out certain parts. Juiz agrees they need to confirm that too. Meanwhile, Miko, Shen, Moi, and Tatiana all collapse from exhaustion despite the massive amount of energy drinks they consumed. Fuko keeps going and eventually finishes. Andy loves the final result. They head straight to the publishing company. Fuko wants to go in alone because it would be strange for someone like Andy to show up claiming to be an artist. Andy reluctantly agrees to wait outside. Fuko is already seated when a staff member, Tomoko, arrives. She apologizes for being late, and they get straight to business. Tomoko reads through the manga and asks how long it took to complete. Fuko panics, saying it took a day would sound ridiculous, but she has no idea what the standard timeline is, so she just spins the wheel of reasonable lies and lands on 1 week. Tomoko is stunned. She praises the composition, which was Andy's contribution, but says the line work and designs are weak. That hits Fuko hard. Critical damage, emotional HP in the red. However, Tomoko adds that the manga has charm and that she can feel Fuko truly loves the hero of the story, who is clearly Andy, in case some of you missed it. But, of course, she doesn't believe he's a real person since zombies don't exist. Fuko laughs it off. Tomoko suggests submitting the manga to an ongoing contest contest and Fuko immediately agrees. Then she makes her actual request, the main reason she came. Tomoko easily leads her to the editorial office where the scripts are stored. It's normally not allowed, but she makes an exception because Fuko is a huge fan of To You from Me. When Fuko sees the script, she immediately tells Andy that it's written in Japanese, confirming their suspicion. Fuko presses further, asking whether the manga has any rejected storylines. Tomoko is surprised she knows about that, so Fuko explains that the story seemed to shift at certain points. Tomoko agrees and confirms that 3 arcs were shelved: the Kohei's betrayal arc, the 4 Kings of the 4 Seasons arc, and the Ando's past arc. Juiz, who has been listening the entire time, instructs them to contact Ano immediately. She wants details about the omitted arcs so they can gain the upper hand. Backup members are available if needed, but the decision is left to Andy. They get lucky when Tomoko calls Ano right away. She suspects the manuscript was replaced and calls to inform her. She also invites Ano to judge the month's contest. Fuko pleads to speak with Ano. Tomoko initially refuses, but Andy suddenly appears and terrifies her into handing the phone to Fuko. Fuko greets Ano and asks if she can read her manga. Tomoko warns her not to waste time since Ano doesn't speak and no one knows what he looks like. To everyone's surprise, Ano responds, agreeing to meet if the manga is interesting enough. He tells Fuko to meet him in 5 hours at a bench in Stanley Park in Canada. He also asks Fuko to bring Andy along before hanging up. Ano saw Fuko and Andy's future. They fight in Uma alongside other members of the union. During the fight, Fuko gets absolutely yeeted out, but Bro still invites them to Canada anyway, like nothing will happen. Fuko and Andy get on a plane. A normal passenger flight would take about 9 hours, but Union Tech says nah and gets them a private plane to get them there in 3. Casual flex. Fuko wonders if they'll really get to meet Ano. He submitted the first chapter of his manga anonymously 20 years ago. It blew up, got insanely popular, and secured a full series slot. Since then, the only way he's communicated with editorial is through silent phone calls and handwritten letters. Certified introvert behavior. Andy is convinced there's something off about Ano, so much so that not even the union has been able to track him down. Color, Andy interested. Bro lives for mystery and violence, preferably combined. His excitement rubs off on Fuko, and she starts feeling it too. They arrive in Canada and are immediately welcomed by Autumn the Season in full aesthetic mode. They reach the bench at Stanley Park right on time. While waiting, they snack and Andy explains the plan. The plan is simple: jump the guy if he gets hostile or steps too close. Straightforward, efficient. Unfortunately, they don't notice Ano casually walking up and picking up the manuscript. He reads the title out loud, and only then do they realize he's been there the whole time. Andy is stunned by how stealthy the guy is. Actual NPC teleport vibes. Ano already knows what they want, but he says there's a price to pay. Right on cue, you must show up. Ano casually explains that there's a bigger spider responsible for spawning these ones, an Uma called Autumn. He tells Fuko and Andy they need to fight Autumn to truly understand each other better, and that doing so will make them several times stronger. He says he believes in them, but as the spiders close in, he draws a frame that becomes reality. The spiders pass through it and immediately get erased, and then everything vanishes like it never happened. Ano looks disappointed for half a second, then immediately lights up when he notices Fuko's manuscript is still intact. Priorities. He wants to talk about the manga before they go fight Autumn. He starts yapping non-stop while Fuko and Andy just stare at him, visibly annoyed. Fuko is officially not a fan anymore. Truly, never meet your heroes. Andy loses patience and draws his sword, demanding Ano tell them what he knows about the future. Ano chuckles, completely unbothered. Then he suddenly teleports next to Fuko and asks to keep the manuscript. From the teleportation alone, Andy figures Ano has a voluntary type negator ability, though he also considers that it might be an artifact. Ano mentions that Autumn is nearby. Fuko immediately goes on high alert, and just then she hears someone scream in pain. She bolts toward the sound. Ano chases after her, trying to stop her, explaining that neither she nor Andy can fully use their powers yet, meaning they can't defeat Autumn. Fuko doesn't care. She just wants to save the human. She remembers what happened the last time and refuses to let that happen again. Even if she can only save one person, she wants to save someone. Ano is impressed. Classic protagonist energy, pure and selfless. They finally encounter Autumn. Autumn feeds on human biography. New quest target marked. Fuko spots the man who screamed earlier, but before she can reach him, Autumn slashes him. His head turns into a book. As Autumn reads it, it gets bored and eats the man instead. Fuko and Andy are stunned. Autumn releases more spiders and targets them, eager for their stories. Fuko jumps onto Andy as he starts obliterating the monsters. He has a plan: build up on luck, enter Autumn's body, deal massive damage, and finish it from the inside. Unfortunately, Autumn seals every opening in its body, shutting that plan down instantly. Andy fires his signature bullet move, but it just bounces off. 0 damage. Pain. Watching them struggle, Ano mutters to himself that they lack ideas. Autumn slashes Andy's leg, and it instantly turns into books. Things are looking bad. Seeing how hopeless the situation is, Ano finally steps in. He cuts off his left arm, draws a new one, and attaches attaches it to his shoulder like it's normal Tuesday behavior. Not stopping there, he cuts off a finger and copies Andy's bullet technique. His version, Volcano Bullet, actually damages Autumn long enough for them to escape using an aircraft Anno draws into existence. Foucault helps bandage his shoulder after the fake arm disappears. Anno doesn't seem bothered by losing an arm at all. Foucault feels awful that he had to go that far for them. Anno announces the beginning of their training arc, reminding them that they're both indebted to him now. Plot progression unlocked.
Finally!
He takes them back to his house and into his workroom. There, Anno creates an emblem. Andy is surprised but stays quiet, watching carefully. Anno uses the emblem to contact Duias, asking for permission to train Foucault and Andy so they can capture Autumn, for her sake and his. Duias immediately refuses. She doesn't trust him. Anno tries to convince her, pointing out that Autumn is far too strong and that wasting such promising characters on a minor event would be ridiculous. Still, Duias refuses, until Foucault and Andy vouch for Anno, saying they trust him after he risked himself to save them. Andy admits he's curious about his past. The gap between him and Victor has always bothered him, and he believes the key to closing that gap lies there. Because of that, he agrees to the training. Juiz finally accepts, but only after making Andy promise they will capture Autumn and return alive. Anno is satisfied and immediately gets to work. He creates Autumn's arm. Since its ability turns people into biographies, it can be used to access Andy's past. Foucault is terrified. Andy, on the other hand, looks excited. Anno strikes him, and Andy transforms into a book that reaches into outer space. Foucault is even more frightened by the sheer size of the book. Anno explains that it's probably because Victor's portion is included in it, and that it also shows just how long Andy has actually been alive. Foucault assumes all she has to do is read it to learn about Andy's past, but Anno shuts that down immediately, saying she has to go inside because reading the whole thing is straight up impossible. Before Foucault can ask anything else, Anno casually separates her body from her soul using an artifact called Soul Caliber. Soul Caliber can pluck out people's souls and seal them inside objects. While Foucault is still buffering and trying to understand what just happened, Anno grabs her soul and sends her straight into the book. Foucault wakes up in a strange place, but she can tell that it's Andy's memory. A gunshot rings out and she's ordered to freeze. The man thinks she's one of the kids who escaped. Foucault tries to explain herself, but bro does not understand Japanese at all, so she struggles helplessly to form English sentences and immediately regrets not taking English more seriously. The man is about to end her life when Andy suddenly swoops in, takes the bullet for her, and shoots the man down. He also mistakes her for one of the children they were to rescue, but the other kids don't recognize her. Foucault is relieved to see Andy and even more relieved that he understands Japanese in this era. Andy is confused, especially because she keeps calling him Andy. One of his crew members, Josh, grabs Foucault, but Andy warns her, so Josh lets go. Unfortunately, she had already touched her hair. Her stroke of unluck triggers and bird poop lands on Josh. Honestly, could have been worse. Josh immediately decides she's a witch and wants her gone permanently. Foucault has to think fast, and then it clicks. She starts reciting Andy's tattoos and claims she knows his future. Josh and another crew member, Sanders, demand to know how she knows about the tattoos, but Andy doesn't care at all and says they should just go eat. The friends of the man Andy eated silently watch them leave. Back in the village, parents are overjoyed to have their children returned and thank Andy's crew. A saloon owner asks how she can repay them, and Andy asks for food and alcohol. She even offers them strong booze, which they happily accept and somehow turn into a competition. Sanders and Red get absolutely wasted, while Josh is just tipsy. Foucault uses the moment to learn more about Andy. She asks what they do, and Andy explains that since many places are still falling apart after the Civil War, they travel around beating up troublemakers and get repaid with food and booze. Josh says that's just the cover story. She then reveals that the real reason is that Andy can't remember his past, so he keeps wandering, hoping to meet someone who knows who he is. Josh threatens to kill Foucault if she turns out to be lying about knowing Andy. Andy steps in, saying Foucault won't talk with all those threats flying around, so they back off. He asks how she knows about his tattoo. Foucault claims he's a nudist, which he immediately refuses to believe. She then brings up him being undead, and the crew laughs it off. Foucault realizes that Andy probably doesn't know that yet. She asks to join the crew. Andy decides to test her with Russian roulette. He loads a single bullet into the gun, spins the cylinder, and hands it to Foucault, telling her to aim at her head and pull the trigger. If she lives, she's in. Foucault accepts. She pulls the trigger and nothing happens. She keeps pulling until Josh stops her. Foucault already knew Andy had loaded the gun. He's not the kind of person who would do that to a non-fighter. She's proud of knowing him that well. Andy lets her join the crew. Suddenly, masked men burst into the room and start shooting. Everyone goes down and the attackers are satisfied. It turns out they had struck a deal with the saloon lady, get the crew drunk so they'd be easy targets, and in exchange, the men would stop bothering the children. Beneath the table, Foucault lies protected by by Josh, who had shielded her and taken a bullet for her. Josh asks if Andy is doing well in the future and whether he's free from pain. Fuko says he is. Josh seems satisfied and passes away. Andy takes Sanders' axes and goes after the attackers. Fuko chases after him, but by the time she arrives, it's already over. She realizes that learning about Andy also means learning about all the people he's had to say goodbye to. Andy comes to understand that he's undead, and since he can't die, pain means nothing to him anymore. Fuko is already crying for him. They bury the fallen crew members. As they stand there, villagers gather. The saloon lady apologizes for going along with the plan, despite being indebted to Andy. She begs him to forgive the others and says she'll atone. As Andy walks toward her, she closes her eyes, bracing herself. Instead, he tells her to pour fresh booze on the crew's graves every year on that day and never miss a single year until she dies, so the dead won't blame her. She agrees. Andy and Fuko leave town together. Along the road, Fuko tells Andy that it was kind of him to give the woman a way to make amends, because otherwise she would have lived forever blaming herself. Andy denies it and says he just wanted her to suffer. Fuko doesn't argue. Time passes as she travels with him. They meet countless people and part ways just as often. To Fuko, it feels like a dream, like she's become a character inside a story. Yet through it all, Andy never smiles and never talks about his past. One night, under the moon, Andy asks Fuko what she thinks dying really means. He believes it's when your brain stops working. Fuko disagrees. She thinks you truly die only when people stop remembering you. She talks about her parents and how they still live on in her heart and continue to guide her. She tells him that Josh and the others are alive inside him too. Andy smiles, and Fuko gets excited. Then Andy grows serious and tells her that his oldest memory is from April 15, 1865 in Washington, D.C. He asks her to go there. He promises he'll be fine and that he'll never be alone as long as he remembers his friends. He leans in to kiss her, but Fuko refuses. Even though he's Andy, he isn't the Andy she loves. Andy doesn't take offense and instead points out that she's starting to fade. As she's pulled away, Fuko tells him they'll meet again 144 years later on August 1st. She tells him to make sure he catches her when she tries to run away and promises she'll kiss him if he does. Fuko is pulled into another memory. It's April 15, 1865 in Washington, D.C. Juiz and Victor used to be close. Juiz wanted to be reincarnated after she eventually kicked the bucket, just so she could see Victor again. But Apocalypse awakens, and Juiz ends up offing Victor, forcing him inside. Love truly is pain. To 1865. Victor suddenly appears in front of Fuko. He tells her exactly where and when she is, then immediately asks her to leave because this part of the memory is his. Fuko refuses. She insists that it's still part of Andy, and she needs to know what happened. Victor, not in the mood for visitors, decides to off her. When he does, she'll simply move on to the next chapter of his memories, but he plans to keep taking her out again and again, all the way to the final memory in the book. December 2020. Fuko asks what good her death will even do for him. Victor explains that if she's gone, she won't be able to snoop through his memories anymore. Plus, her death will weaken Andy's psyche, letting Victor take full control and be himself again. Fuko knows she can't beat him, so she stops resisting. He ends her. Andy wakes up in a different memory, only to immediately run into Victor and get removed again. No breaks, no mercy. In the next memory, Fuko starts running for her life. She screams for Andy, but he's nowhere to be found. Suddenly, Andy launches a wide-range attack. Everything blows up. Victor assumes she's gone for good and that she'll never see Andy. He prepares to return to Juiz when Andy suddenly bursts out of the rubble and attacks him. To Victor's surprise, the attack is insanely powerful and slices him clean in half. Fuko is relieved to see Andy. Victor regenerates, and Andy comes face to face with his other personality for the first time. Andy demands to know why Victor is after Fuko. Victor answers that she's trying to sneak perks into his past. Since she isn't a resident of the book, yeeting her enough times will eventually erase her soul. And because Andy's outside self depends on her, deleting her is Victor's ticket to freedom. Andy refuses. He doesn't know Fuko from the outside world yet, but even here, she's already changed his life for the better. He chooses to protect her and make sure she reaches his future self. Victor doesn't mind ending them both and attacks. Andy dodges every strike with impressive speed. He's picked up new skills too, like solidifying his blood into a sword because of course he did. He holds his ground for a while, but Victor is still stronger, so yeah, he starts losing. Still, the fight drags on, and Victor notices just how much Andy has grown. Andy tells Fuko to let go of him. She hesitates because of her unluck, but Andy insists, so she kisses him, then flees. Andy snaps off his fingers and launches them at Victor. Victor thinks taking the hit isn't worth it until the first stroke of unluck hits, a gas explosion. That's when he realizes Andy is the real deal. Andy had loaded his soul into his fingers, so the unluck is now locked onto them as they surround Victor. As Victor keeps fighting Andy, the unluck keeps striking. This time it hits Andy too, but bro does not care. Andy surprises Victor yet again by regenerating from his torso, which is faster and lets him immediately counterattack. Meeting Fuko really did change his life. She made him realize that life doesn't have to be lived strictly by logic. He can live however he wants, and because of that realization, he's grown stronger. The final stroke of unluck arrives, the same device once used to capture Andy. Victor's head gets locked inside it. Andy tells Fuko he'll eventually break out anyway, since he's a deviant. Fuko wants to talk to Victor. She figures that instead of digging through his memories, she could just ask him. Andy tells Victor to break free, and he does, completely naked. Fuko is still very not used to that. Victor gets dressed, and the interview begins. Fuko's first question is about his relationship with Louise. Andy doesn't know who Louise is, but he doesn't interrupt. Fuko has seen fragments of Victor's memories with Louise, how they created the union together and worked tirelessly side by side. She wants to know why Victor is now trying to interfere with their plans. Victor replies that Fuko is just like Ju is, willing to risk danger just to protect the people she cares about. At first, everything went well. They cleared quests and got closer to victory, but Victor eventually realized that they could never defeat God. They should have given up, but Juiz refused. She boarded the Ark and looped again and again. Victor believes she's a fool and should leave this world behind to spare herself the suffering. He once decided to send her to the afterlife himself, unable to watch the woman he loves continue to suffer. But now, he's changed his mind. The last stroke of unluck Fuko unleashed was proof of evolution. They summoned something that could work for him, since death itself wasn't his unluck. If they can personalize attacks, then they can research God, and eventually, their unluck might reach God itself. With that, Victor leaves them alone. As he walks away, Fuko calls out, asking what happened in 1865. Victor tells her it doesn't matter anymore now that she's grown stronger. If she really wants answers, she can ask Louise herself. Fuko then asks how she can leave the memory. Victor tells her she needs to kiss Andy and not a peck. Fuko panics. Before she can prepare herself, Andy grabs her and pulls her into a kiss. Fuko starts crying for reasons even she doesn't fully understand. She begins to fade and the book starts closing. They say their goodbyes. Andy promises that in the future he'll be even more handsome and will properly her. Fuko looks forward to it. Excited, the book closes. Blackout. Anno sits nearby, quietly watching over Fuko as she is unconscious. Moments later, Rip and Bax arrive, accompanied by Unseen, Sean. Anno acknowledges their presence but immediately warns them that he will unalive them if they interfere with Fuko or the ongoing process. Rip ignores the threat and launches an attack anyway, stating that their true objective is to uncover the future. Anno chose not to draw. Rip demands that Anno reveal what he knows, threatening to shred both Fuko and Andy with his slashes if he refuses. Anno rejects the demand without hesitation. Sean, growing increasingly excited, eagerly considers unaliving Fuko, forcing Rip to order him to calm down. Sean refuses to fully comply, claiming that killing Fuko would earn him a higher seat than Rip's in Under. Still, he restrains himself just enough to not attack her right away. Rip attempts a different approach, reasoning with Anno and pointing out that Anno has already seen both the past and the future. He questions what purpose there is in saving Andy and Fuko. Anno remains firm, explaining that Andy and Fuko are the sole reasons he is still alive, and because of that, he is determined to protect them. Though he manages to block Rip's attack initially, Rip ultimately overwhelms him and severs one of his arms. As a child, Anno loved listening to his mother read manga to him before bed. Over time, he began creating his own characters and stories, which his mother eagerly read. Seeing her smile at his work filled him with joy. One day, Anno stumbled upon the artifact known as the G-Pen in a dark alley. The moment he touched it, he saw everything: the past, the future, and the massive terrifying existence known as God. Rather than feeling scared, Anno was fascinated. He viewed the entire revelation as an incredibly creative story and immediately wanted to share it with his mother. But as he stepped out of the alley, he passed straight through a stranger. Unaware of it at the time, Anno had already become something like a ghost. Believing he had merely bumped into the man, Anno apologized quickly, but the man neither reacted nor acknowledged him. Anno couldn't be seen or heard. From that moment onward, he had been chosen as a negator. When he returned home, he drew the figures he had seen in his vision. When his mother arrived, he rushed to show her the drawings, bursting with excitement. To his shock, she couldn't see or hear him. Anno watched helplessly as his mother searched desperately for him, eventually reporting him missing. She exhausted every option trying to find him, but no one had any idea where he was. Anno was devastated, forced to witness her heartbreak without being able to comfort her. As she wept, she prayed to God, wishing that Anno was safe somewhere, smiling and doing well. She hoped he would continue drawing manga, just as he always loved to do. Those words gave Anno a renewed sense of purpose. Determined, he finally left his home and set out on his journey. Realizing that he was a negator whose powers would never leave him, Anno briefly considered ending his life. However, his love for manga kept him moving forward. From the visions he had seen, Anno grew especially fond of Andy and Fuko, who became his favorite characters. He began drawing manga to fulfill his mother's wish, hoping that one day he could share their story with the world. Through constant learning and practice, he refined his skills and eventually became a professional. He published his first manga under a fabricated name, concealing his true identity. To his surprise, his work gained massive recognition. Anno realized that as long as he avoided using his real name or linking the story to his former self, people could still acknowledge his existence. Eventually, his manga reached his mother. Even in her old age, she continued to enjoy reading it. Years later, Anno began questioning whether Andy and Fuko's story had truly been real. It felt real, yet he struggled to fully believe it. Then, an idea struck him. According to his vision, Andy was in Japan on that exact day, training in quick-draw sword techniques. Despite his doubts, Anno went searching for Andy, unwilling to let the opportunity slip by. His gamble paid off. He found Andy in person. Overcome with excitement, Anno rushed toward him, only to pass straight through his body. He was reminded once again that he was still like a ghost. After completing his training, Andy decided to take his own life, despite his sensei's wishes. She wanted him to stay, but Andy stated that he would only do so if she could outlive him. Witnessing this reminded Anno of the immense suffering negators endure due to powers forced upon them. Despite that suffering, they still attempted to challenge God. Accepting that his memories were real, Anno recalled how the heroes ultimately failed. They lost by losing Andy and Fuko. Refusing to let that happen, Anno accepted the heavy responsibility, being the only one who knew the truth. He searched desperately for a way to relay this information without revealing himself. Eventually, he discovered a loophole in the world's rules. Using his fake identity, he could publish content that everyone could see, and he took full advantage of it. Still, he had to be careful. Drawing events exactly as they would occur would prevent growth and development Andy and the others. So instead, he crafted the perfect story, focusing heavily on a specific quest, the Autumn Battle. This was where everything went wrong, where Fuko was destined to lose her life. Anno was determined to change that outcome and devoted himself entirely to doing so. Back in the present, Anno collapses after losing his second arm. He knows this is the exact moment when the tragedy, Fuko's death, is meant to occur. Suddenly, Andy returns. Without hesitation, Anno signals him to unleash a large-scale attack. Rip and Bax evade it, but Sean is caught in the blast just as he was about to slit Fuko's throat. Anno had foreseen that Sean was the cause of Fuko's death, and now that fate had been altered, Fuko regains consciousness and immediately rushes to Anno's side, worried about his condition. Andy explains what happened and urges her to compose herself, reminding her that they had prepared for this. Together, they face Rip and Bax, ready to fight. Anno lies there, fulfilled, knowing he succeeded. The battle resumes, and Bax manages to seize Fuko's gun artifact. However, because she had touched her earlier, she suffers a stroke of bad luck and falls through the building. Rip, now without backup, grows frustrated but remains unfazed, fully prepared to handle everything on his own. Fuko attempts to reason with him, proposing that they work together to capture Autumn. She insists that as negators, their ultimate goal should be to unalive God. Rip counters by stating that defeating God is Billy's objective, not his. Everyone in Under has their own goal. He and Lotla seek the arc that Billy possesses. Their alliance with others only exists when interests align. If Andy and Fuko provide information about the arc, they can cooperate. Otherwise, they are obstacles that must be eliminated. Anno struggles to speak, revealing that neither Rip nor Lotla can ride the arc. He further states that Rip will also lose Lotla. The revelation shatters Rip, who has been driven by the desire to save someone he lost in the past, willing to gamble everything to change it using the arc. Lotla shares the same resolve. Expressing how passionate he is about this, Rip asks Andy and Fuko to stand aside and leave Autumn to him. The creature is already nearby, and Lotla confirms whether they should attack. Rip gives the order and charges forward. Andy and Fuko, however, have no intention of letting him claim it. The season changes to autumn, and as Anno watches the others charge into battle, he admits that he doesn't know what happens from here, but he trusts Andy and Fuko's abilities. Fuko points out that Autumn is even bigger in size, and Andy believes that his changing phases. He realizes that Autumn kept eating people while they were inside the book. Andy lands on Autumn, and it immediately shields its face, but Andy keeps rushing forward and uses his bloody enchant move to strike its face, finally causing damage. Fuko is happy about the progress, only for Autumn to immediately heal. When Rip sees this, he knows it's up to him and attacks, but his weapon takes the damage instead. Autumn then launches an attack on them, and they manage to dodge it. Latla scolds Rip for his attack not doing any damage, and he pulls the "I'm just a kid" card. Anno thinks back on everything that has happened and realizes that he has one last role to play. He calls out to everyone and asks them to buy him time while he creates an artifact that will help them win. Andy agrees, but Rip is skeptical, so he asks Latla if it's a lie. She agrees that it is, but Bax reminds Rip that her sister's predictions are usually wrong, so he should trust the opposite of what she says. Rip agrees, with the plan of taking the profit after they defeat Autumn. Andy keeps fighting as Anno reflects on his life, how lonely and sad he was even while constantly drawing. In the end, he was never able to pass his message on to his mother before she died. He introduces Andy and Fuko to his mom and finally Rip, who he had drawn to show her. He knows Rip is kind, but that he suppresses it because of losing someone dear to him. He then draws the artifact, and when it comes alive, he tells it Rip's name and age. The artifact activates and blasts Rip, turning him into his adult self. Rip remembers that this is the same artifact Fung once used to heal him, and he knows it causes the user to age 10 times the length they manipulate, so he rushes back to Anno. Anno has already grown old, and Rip decides to use the artifact on him, but it disappears. Anno tells him not to worry, that he will simply return to being alone again. He explains that Rip's power is necessary to defeat Autumn, which is why he did this. After finishing his speech, he bursts, and the pen has broken as well. Fuko suddenly remembers her childhood, when a friend's mother came to complain to her grandfather that their child had injuries because of Fuko. Her grandfather tried to defend her, but she was hurt by the situation regardless. After the parent left, her grandfather reassured her that there was nothing wrong with her. She picked up a manga her mother used to read, and with her grandfather's permission, she started reading it. She enjoyed it deeply, and it became her companion during lonely days, even after her grandfather passed away. It was the one thing that kept her from ending it all. Shout out to manga for being cheaper than therapy. Back in the present, Andy continues fighting Autumn, but every strike is quickly healed. Rip approaches them and asks about Anno, questioning why he would turn him back to normal at the expense of his own life. He assumes it's a trick to make him soften up and help them, and insists that it won't change his mind. Fuko reminds him of everything Anno did for them, explaining that it was all to help them defeat Autumn. Meanwhile, Bax wonders why Rip doesn't look happy to be normal again, and Latla explains that he wants to be a villain, because being a hero would mean giving up on Leela. As Bax and Latla rejoin the others, Andy assigns roles. He instructs Rip to strike the exact same spot he does to make it unrepairable. Rip tries to argue, saying he never agreed to help, but Andy doesn't care. Suddenly, explosions erupt as Autumn's spiderlings emerge from the ground and merge into its body, causing it to change form once again. In this new form, Autumn can speak, telling them they would make lovely books. It tries to use Andy as a bookmark, and time freezes as Rip remembers his moments with Layla and finally decides to help. Finally, walking in, he rushes in and cleanly slices off one of Autumn's legs. Autumn tries to regenerate, but it's useless. Everyone is happy that Rip finally decided to help them. He then asks Latla if they will win, and she confidently predicts that they will definitely lose. The fight begins, and everything goes according to how Anno pictured it. Andy and the others are gaining the upper hand. At some point, Andy asks Fuko for some unluck, and she kisses him on the cheek, then he drops her onto Latla and Bax's ride. Andy and Rip then finally face Autumn. They attack and sink, making Autumn unable to regenerate and exposing its core, though Autumn temporarily shields it. The girls stay on standby, and Andy uses Anno's move, an unluck bullet, shooting straight at the core and exposing it. The girls then charge in at full force, driving into Autumn, cutting it in half and extracting the core. Everything explodes as they fly out unscathed. Meanwhile, Andy is launched into the woods. When he sits up, he fist bumps the air as if referring to Anno, informing him of their victory. Fortunately for him, Anno is right there. He is happy that even though he has disappeared, he is still remembered, and that's all that matters to him. The two finally fist bump. Everyone watches Autumn disappear, enjoying their victory. Rip then orders Latla to collect the Soul Caliber. Fuko thanks him for joining hands with him to fight Autumn, knowing that if it were just her and Andy, they wouldn't have won. She isn't even concerned that he is taking the artifact. She then suggests they work together, seeing as they were in perfect sync. Rip refuses her offer. He knows that joining forces with Fuko would mean joining the Union, but he is after the arc that Hoiz is keeping to herself. He would have to steal it from her by force, and knows he can't do that if he joins the Union. Later, Bax apologizes to Fuko for stealing her gun, and Fuko also apologizes for hitting her. She then confirms that Rip's team is really okay with giving them Autumn as well, and Rip lets her know it's no problem, as he would probably only get scolded for letting Sean get yeeted. Latla then gives Fuko the pieces of the broken pen she managed to gather. Rip asks Andy who Anno was, and he tells him, Negator unknown. Rip wishes them the best and hopes they get to meet Anno again. While saying goodbye to Rip, Fuko tenses up and falls onto Andy because her body can't keep up with all that growing within the book. Andy commends Fuko for a job well done.
For what?
The autumn season disappears.